She followed through with a headbutt, stomped hard on his instep. When Rourke walked in 10 minutes later, he watched his wife fly through the air and go skidding across the mat. Lifting a brow, he leaned back against the door and settled down to watch. She didn't have time to gain her feet before the droid was on her, so she grabbed one of his ankles, twisted, hauled, and thrusted. Her mind was a blank now, a black blank. Her breath was heaving, and she could taste the metallic flavor of blood inside her mouth. She went at her opponent like a hailstorm, cold and relentless. Each jab, each blow, each kick, given or received, sang through her body with icy, primitive rage. Her eyes were flat with violence now, her fists merciless as she concentrated on the head, working the droid back. Frowning, Rourke straightened. Her breath was wheezing out now, all but sobbing, yet she didn't stop. When the droid staggered, went down on its knees, she crouched for the kill. "End program," Rourke ordered, and caught his wife's rigid arm before she could kick the droid's lolling head. "You're going to damage the unit," he said mildly. "It isn't designed for to the death." She bent over, resting her hands on her knees to catch her breath. Her mind was full of red now, red rage, and she needed to clear it. "Sorry, I guess I got carried away." She eyed the droid, who remained slumped on his knees, mouth slack, eyes blank as a doll's. "I'll run a diagnostic on it. Don't worry about it." He started to turn her to face him, but she broke away, moved across the room for a towel. "In the mood for a fight?" "I guess I wanted to pound something. Should I suit up?" He was smiling a little, until she lowered the towel. The rage had drained from her face. All that was left in her eyes was misery. "What is it, Eve? What happened?" "Nothing. Just a rough day." She tossed the towel aside, moved to the cold box unit for a bottle of mineral water. "So far, Weinberg's house is a bust. Nothing there to us. Sweepers didn't find anything in the garage, either. Didn't expect them to. I jabbed some at Cross again, and at Alban the Magnificent. Had a consult with Mira. Her daughter's a Wiccan. Can you beat that?" It wasn't work, he thought, that put that painful unhappiness in her eyes. "What is it?" "Isn't that enough? It's going to be tough to get an objective consult from Mira when her daughter's into spell casting. Then there's Peabody. She's caught a damn cold, and her head's so full of snot I have to say everything twice before it gets through." She was talking too fast, Eve realized. Words were tumbling out of her mouth, and she couldn't seem to stop them. "A hell of a lot of good she's going to be to me, hacking and sneezing all goddamn day. The media picked up on Weinberg, and the fact that you and I were on scene when it went down. My links jammed with fucking reporters. Leaks everywhere. Fucking leaks everywhere. Feeney found out I've been holding back on him." "Ah," Rourke thought, "there we are." "He was hard on you?" "Why shouldn't he be?" Her voice rose as she whirled and searched for temper to cover the hurt. "He should have been able to trust me. I lied to him, right to his face." "What choice did you have?" "There's always a choice." She bit the words off, heaved the half-empty bottle at the wall where it bounced and spewed out bubbling water. "There's always a choice," she repeated. "I made mine. I knew how he felt about Frank, about Alice, but I blocked him out. I followed orders. I walked the line." She could feel the pain rising, straining to spew as the water had spewed out of the bottle. She fought to block it back. He was right. Everything he said to me, everything. I could have gone to him on the side. "Is that what you were trained to do? Is that what he trained you to do?" "He made me," she said fiercely. "I owe him. I should have told him how it was going down." "No." He stepped to her, took her by the shoulders. "No, you couldn't." "I could have!" She shouted it. "I should have. I wish to God I had." And broke. Covered her face with her hands and broke. "Oh, God, what am I going to do?" Rourke gathered her close. She cried rarely, a last resort, and always when the tears finally came they were vicious. "He needs time. He's a cop, Eve. Part of him already understands. The rest just needs to catch up." "No." Her hands fisted in his shirt, held on. "The way he looked at me. I've lost him, Rourke. I've lost him. I swear I'd rather lose my badge." He waited while the tears stormed out, while her body shook with them. There were such strong emotions in her, he thought, rocking as her hands clenched and unclenched against his back. Emotions she'd spent a lifetime bottling up, so they were only the more potent when they broke free. Damn it! She let out a breath, long and shaky. Her head felt achy, muffled, her throat raw. I hate doing that. It doesn't help. More than you think. He stroked a hand over her hair, then tipped it under her chin to lift her face. You need food and a decent night's sleep, so you can do what you need to do. What I need to do? Close the case. Once you have, you can put all this behind you. Yeah. She pushed her hands over her hot, wet cheeks. Close the case. That's the bottom line. She hissed out a breath. That's the goddamn job. That's justice. He brushed a thumb over the dent in her chin. Isn't it? She looked up at him, her eyes reddened, swollen, exhausted. I don't know anymore. She didn't eat, and he didn't press her. There had been grief in his life, and he knew food wasn't the answer. He'd considered browbeating her into taking a sedative. That, he knew, would have been an ugly business. So he was grateful when she went to bed early. He made some excuse about a conference call. From his office, he watched on the monitor until her restless twists and turns stopped, and she slept. What he had to do would take no more than an hour or two. He doubted she'd surface before then and miss him. He'd never been to Feeney's. The apartment building was comfortably shabby, well secured and unpretentious. Rourke thought it suited the man. Because he didn't want to risk being refused entrance, he bypassed the security buzzer and entrance locks. That suited him. He strolled through the tiny lobby, caught the faint scent of a recent insect extermination. Though he approved the intent, he disliked the lingering reminder of it, and made a note to have it with. After all, he owned the building. He stepped into an elevator, requested the 3rd floor. He noticed when he stepped out again that the corridor carpet could use replacing. But it was well lit, the tiny beam on the security cameras blinking efficiently. The walls were clean and thick enough to muffle all but a faint hum of life behind closed doors. A low drift of music, a quick rumble of laughter, a fretful baby's nighttime wail. Life, Rourke thought, and a pleasant one. He rang the bell at Feeney's door and waited. His eyes stared soberly at the peep screen, continued to stare when Feeney's irritated voice came through the intercom. What the hell do you want? You slumming? I don't think this building qualifies as a slum. Anything does compared to that palace you live in. Do you want to discuss the difference in our living arrangements through the door, or are you going to ask me in? I asked what you want. You know why I'm here. He quirked a brow, making sure it was just insulting enough. You've got guts enough to face me, don't you, Feeney? It had, as Rourke had expected, the right effect. The door swung open. Feeney stood, blocking entrance with his compact body braced for war, his rumpled face bright with fury. It's none of your fucking business. On the contrary. Rourke stood where he was, kept his voice even. It's very much my fucking business. But I don't believe it's any of your neighbors. Teeth clenched, Feeney stepped back. Come in and say what you have to say, then get the hell out. Is your wife at home? Rourke asked when Feeney slammed the door at his back. She's got a girls' thing tonight. Feeney inclined his head, much like a bull, Rourke thought, preparing to charge. You want to take a shot at me? You go ahead. I wouldn't mind pounding that pretty face of yours. Christ Jesus, she's just like you. Shaking his head, Rourke wandered the living room. Homey, he decided. Not quite tidy. The viewing screen was set on the ball game, the sound muted. The batter swung, the ball flew in total silence. What's the score? Yanks are up by 1, bottom of the 7th. He caught himself on the verge of offering Rourke a beer, then stiffened again. She told you, didn't she? Filled you in? Right from the get-go. She wasn't under orders not to. And she thought I could help. He could help, Feeney thought, and tasted bitterness. Her rich, fancy husband could help, but not her former trainer, not her former partner, not the man who had worked side by side with pride and goddammit affection for 10 years. Doesn't make you less of a civilian. His tired eyes went broody. You didn't even know Frank. No, I didn't. But Eve did. She cared. We'd been partners, me and Frank. We were friends. Family. She had no business bumping me out of it. That's how I feel. That's what I told her. I'm sure you did. Rourke turned away from the view screen, looked Feeney dead in the eye. And however you told her, it broke her heart. Dented her feelings some. Feeney walked away, picked up a half-empty bottle of beer. Even through the murky haze of his fury, he'd seen the devastation in her eyes when he'd come down on her, and had willed himself not to give a damn. She'll get over it. He drank deeply, knowing the taste wouldn't overpower the bitterness lodged in his throat. She'll do her job. She just won't do it with me anymore. I said you broke her heart. I meant it. How long have you known her, Feeney? Rourke's voice hardened, demanding attention. 10 years? 11? How many times have you seen her fall apart? I imagine you could count them on the fingers of one hand. Well, I watched her fall apart tonight. He took a careful breath. Temper wasn't the answer here, not for any of them. If you wanted to crush her, you succeeded. I told her how things were, that's all. Guilt was already seeping in. He slammed down the bottle, determined to chase it away. Cops back each other, they trust each other, or they've got nothing. She was digging on Frank. She should have come to me. Is that what you'd have told her to do? Rourke countered. Is that the kind of cop you helped her become? It wasn't you in Whitney's office, taking the orders, doing the job. He went on without giving Feeney time to answer. And suffering for it. No. A fresh wave of bitterness passed through him. It wasn't me. Pat deliberately turned up the sound and stared at the ancient battle on the screen. Stubborn, thick-headed Irish bastard, Rourke thought, with twin tugs of sympathy and impatience. You did me a favor once, Rourke began, when I was first involved with Eve, and I hurt her because I misunderstood a situation. You straightened me out on that, so I'm going to do you a similar favor. I don't want your favors. You'll have it anyway. Rourke sat in a chair, comfortably sprung. He helped himself to Feeney's nearly empty bottle. What do you know about her father? What? Baffled now, Feeney turned his head and stared. What the hell does that have to do with anything? It has everything to do with her. Did you know he beat her, tortured her, raped her repeatedly until she was 8 years old? A muscle worked in Feeney's jaw as he turned away again, muted the screen. He'd known that she'd been found in an alley at 8, beaten, broken, sexually abused. That was on record, and he never worked with anyone without knowing their official data. But he hadn't known it was her father who'd done it. He'd suspected as much, but he hadn't known. His stomach twisted, his hands clenched. I'm sorry for that. She never brought it up. She didn't always remember. Or, more likely, she did and refused to remember. She still has nightmares, flashbacks. You got no business telling me this. She'd likely say the same, but I am telling you anyway. She made herself what she is, and you helped. She'd go to the wall for you, you know that. Cops, back up, cops, that's the job. I'm not talking about the job. She loves you, and she doesn't love easily. It's difficult for her to feel it, and to show it. Part of her may always be braced for betrayal, for a blow. You've been her father for 10 years, Feeney. She didn't deserve to be broken again. Rourke stood, and saying nothing more, walked out. Alone, Feeney raked his hands up over his face, into his wiry red hair, then let them drop on his lap. It was 6:15 when Eve rolled over, blinked at the light streaming through the windows. Rourke preferred waking to sun. Unless she snuck out of bed or climbed in well after him, she didn't get her shot at pulling the privacy screens. She felt logy, decided it was too much sleep, and started to slip out of bed. Rourke's arm swept out and pinned her. Not yet. His voice was husky, his eyes still closed as he tugged her back over. "I'm awake. I can get an early start." She wiggled. "I've been in bed nearly 9 hours. I can't sleep any more." He opened one eye, sufficient to note that she did indeed look rested. "You're a detective," he pointed out. "I'll bet if you investigated, you'd uncover the startling fact that there are activities that can be done in bed other than sleep." His lips curved as he rolled on top of her. "Allow me to give you the first clue." It shouldn't have surprised her that he was already hard, or that she would be so instantly ready for him. He slid inside her, smooth, slow, deep, and watched the lingering sleep clear from her eyes into awareness. "I think I've figured it out already." She lifted her hips, matched his lazy pace. "You're such a quick study." He lowered his lips to nuzzle just under her jawline. "I like this spot," he murmured. "And this one." His hand trailed up her rib cage, cupped her breast. The arousal was sweet, simple, and made her sigh. "Let me know when you get to something you don't like." She wrapped her arms around him, her legs. He was so solid, so warm, the steady beat of his heart against hers so comforting. Pleasure built in gauzy layers, floating over her mind, stroking through her body. "Go over for me." He nibbled her lips, then swept his tongue inside to tangle with hers, to nip, to suck. "Go over," he repeated. "Slow." "Well," her breath was already hitching, catching in her throat. "Since you ask so nice." The climax rolled through her, one long, lingering wave. She felt him follow, caught in the same current, and pressed her cheek to his. Was that like a cookie? She wondered. You know, have a cookie. You'll feel better. She put her hands on either side of his face, lifting it as he laughed. "Were you making me feel better?" "I certainly hope so. It's for me." He dipped his head to kiss her lightly. "I wanted you. I always do." It's funny how men can wake up with their brains in their cocks. It makes us what we are. Still chuckling, he rolled her over him, patted her butt. "Let's take a shower. I'll give you another cookie." 30 minutes later, she stumbled out of the shower and into the drawing tube. He was a quick change artist when it came to mood, she thought dizzily. From lazy to amused to hot, steamy, mind-numbing sex, all in one short morning. Because her system was still frazzled, she braced a hand against the curve of the tube as warm air blew around her. When he stepped out of the shower, she jabbed out a finger. "Stay away from me. You grab me again, I'll have to take you down. I mean it. I've got to work." He hummed a tune and used a towel. "I like making love to you in the morning. You only wake up fast if you get a call from dispatch or if I seduce you. I'm awake now." She stepped out, pushed a hand through her hair. Giving herself safe distance, she reached for a robe. "Go look at the stock reports or something." "I intend to." "You'll want breakfast," he added as he left the room. "I'll order it up." She started to tell him she wasn't hungry. She wasn't, but she knew without fuel she wouldn't make it through the day. When she joined him in the bedroom, he was slipping into a shirt, his gaze focused on the table monitor, where he could view the headlines and financial reports. She walked past him to her closet, chose plain gray trousers. "I'm sorry I lost it last night." He lifted his gaze, noted she kept her back to him as she pawed out a shirt. "You were upset. You had a right to be. Anyway, I appreciate you not making me feel like an idiot." "How do you feel now?" She jerked a shoulder. "I've got a job to do." She'd come to that end while she'd tossed her way into sleep. "I'm going to do it. Maybe if I do it right, Feeney won't hate me so much when it's over." "He doesn't hate you, Eve." When she didn't answer, he let it drop. He'd already programmed their meal in the recessed auto chef. "I thought ham and eggs would do the trick this morning." He got the coffee first, brought it to the table in the sitting area. "It'll do the trick any morning." She pasted on a determined smile, went over to get the food herself. He ordered the viewing screen on Channel 75 while she shoveled in creamy eggs. She scowled as the on-air reporter, glossy as a china doll at 7:30 in the morning, recited the data on the Weinberg homicide. Though Lieutenant Eve Dallas, assigned to the Homicide Division of NYPSD, was on the scene, only yards away from the murder site, the police have no solid leads. The investigation continues. This is the second stabbing death connected with Lieutenant Dallas in as many days. When asked if the cases are linked, Dallas refused to comment. A 10-year-old kid with a vision defect could see they're linked, for Christ's sake. She had been eating on automatic, and now shoved the plate aside. That cross bitch is sitting in her hell house, laughing. Springing up, she began to pace. Rourke took it as a good sign. If she was angry, she wasn't feeling sorry for herself. He chose some fresh strawberry jam for his croissant. I'm going to nail her. I swear to God, I'm going to nail her. For all of them. I need to connect Weinberg to her. If I can do that, I can harass her some more. May not be enough to get me a warrant to toss her place, but I can keep on her ass. Well, then. Rourke wiped his fingers with a pale blue linen cloth, set it aside. I should be able to help you with that. As she continued to pace and mutter, he rose, walked to a dresser, took a sealed disc from a drawer. Lieutenant. What? I'm thinking. Then it won't interrupt your train of thought with a list of membership from Cross's cult. With a half smile on his face, he tapped the disc against his palm and waited for her eyes to clear and shoot to him. The list? You got the membership roster? How? He cocked his head. You don't really want to know how, do you? No, she said it immediately. No, I guess I don't. Just tell me he's on it. She closed her eyes briefly. Just tell me Weinberg's on the list. He certainly is. Her grin flashed quick and fever-bright. I love you. Rourke handed her the disc. I know you do. Chapter 14. Feeney wanted to see Whitney first, so we made it early, made it personal. They, too, went back together a long way, Feeney thought, as he pulled up in front of the neat two-level home in the burbs. He'd been here socially over the years. The commander's wife loved to throw parties. His mood wasn't sociable now as he strode up the pebbled walk toward the quiet house in the Wakening neighborhood. A few yards down, a dog was barking in high, monotonous yips. The bark had none of the faintly metallic ring that said droid, but held a vibrancy of flesh and blood. The kind of dog that shit in the yard, Feeney thought, with a shake of his head, and scratched at fleas. Leaves skittered playfully along the street, most of them making beelines for lawns. Lawns that were, in a neighborhood like this, tended like a religion. Feeney himself didn't get burb life, where you had to rake and mow and water, or hire someone to rake and mow and water. He'd raised his family in the city, used the public parks. Hell, you had to pay for them anyway. He moved his shoulders restlessly, not quite comfortable with the morning silence. Anna Whitney answered his knock, and though she couldn't have been expecting company at that hour, she was already decked out in a trim jumpsuit. Her light hair waved stylishly, and her makeup was subtle and perfect. Her lips curved in welcome. Her eyes may have flickered with surprise and curiosity, but she was too much the cop's wife to ask questions. Feeney, how nice to see you. Come in, please have some coffee. Jack's just having his second cup in the kitchen. Sorry to disturb you at home, Anna. I need a few minutes of the commander's time. Of course. And how's Sheila? She asked as she led the way down the hall toward the kitchen. She's fine. She looked just wonderful the last time I saw her. Her new stylist is terrific. Jack, you've got company for coffee. She breezed into the kitchen, caught the surprise, then the speculation in her husband's eyes. She knew enough to make a quick exit. I'll let you two chat. I've got a million things to do this morning. Feeney, you give Sheila my best now. I will, thanks. He waited until the door swung closed, never taking his eyes off Whitney's. God damn it, Jack. This should be discussed in my office, Feeney. I'm talking to you. Feeney jabbed a finger. To someone I've known 25 years. To someone who knew Frank. Why'd you cut me out of this? Why did you order Dallas to lie to me? That was my decision, Feeney. The investigation had to be on a need-to-know basis. And I didn't need to know. No. Whitney folded his big hands. You didn't need to know. Frank and I raised some of our kids together. Alice was my godchild. Frank and I rode as partners for 5 fucking years. Our wives are like sisters. Who the hell are you to decide I don't need to know he's being investigated? Your commander, Whitney said shortly, and pushed his still steaming coffee aside. And the reasons you just stated are the very reasons I made the decision. You pushed me aside. You know damn well my division should have been involved. You needed records. Records were part of the problem, Whitney said evenly. There was no record of a heart defect in his medical files, no record of a connection, personal or professional, between him and a known chemi dealer. Frank had nothing to do with the legals. No records, Whitney continued, and his closest friend is the best E-detective in the city. Whitney's eyes went wide, and his color rose hot. You think I wiped records? You had Dallas looking at me? No, I didn't think you wiped records, but it wasn't something I could ignore with IAD breathing down my neck. Who would you have picked to do the work, Feeney? Whitney demanded with an impatient gesture. I knew that Lieutenant Dallas would be thorough and careful, and that she'd bust her ass to clear both you and Frank. I knew she had contacts that could access those records. Deluged by emotion, Feeney turned to stare out of the gleaming window into the backyard with its tidily mowed grass and majestic fall flowers. You put her in a bad spot. You ordered her into a lousy position, Jack. Is that what happens when you command? You put your troops' backs to the wall? Yep, that's what happens. Whitney ran a hand over his dark, grizzled hair. You do what needs to be done, and you live with it. I had IAD drooling. My priority was to clear Frank and shield his family from any more hardship. Dallas was my best shot. You trained her, Feeney. You know she was my best shot. I trained her, Feeney agreed, sick inside. What would you have done? Whitney demanded. Straight, Feeney. You've got a dead cop who's been tagged buying illegals from a suspected dealer who's under surveillance. There were drugs in his system when he died. Your gut tells you there's no way he was dirty. And maybe your heart's telling you, too, because you remember when you were both rookies, but IAD's got no gut, and it's got no heart. What would you have done? And because he'd had a sleepless night to think on it, to worry the steps, Feeney shook his head. I don't know. But I know I don't want your job, Commander. You've got to be crazy to want this job. Whitney's wide face relaxed slightly. Dallas has gone a long way to clearing Frank, and she took you out of it within the first 24 hours. She'd hardly had more than a week on this, and she's already cleared a path. With her reports, I've been able to back IAD off. They're not happy about Frank setting up his own sting, but they've eased the pressure. That's good. Feeney dug his hands into his pockets as he turned back. She's good. Christ, Jack, I hit her hard. Whitney's brows knit. You should have come to me. Going after her was off, Feeney. I gave the orders. I took it personal. I made it personal. He remembered how she'd looked at him, her face pale, her eyes blank. He'd seen people with that look before, victims, he thought now, who were used to taking a fist in the face. I've got to fix it with her. She called in a couple minutes before you showed up. She's doing a follow-through on a new lead, at home. Feeney jerked his head in a nod. I'd like a couple hours personal time. You've got it. And I want in on this. Whitney sat back, considered. That'll be up to Dallas. She's primary. If we're opening this up, she chooses her own team. Answer the link, will you, Peabody? Eve continued to scan the data on screen as her link beeped insistently. It was a wonder to her how many names she recognized from the social, political, and professional registers. It was doubtful she'd have recognized quite so many a year before, but connecting with Rourke had broadened her horizons. Doctors, lawyers, she muttered. Christ, this guy's been to dinner here, and I think Rourke used to sleep with this woman. This dancer, she's got a hit on Broadway and a mile of leg. "It's Nadine," Peabody announced, and wondered if Eve was talking to herself or really wanted to share that particular information. She hacked, sneezed, then added in her now raspy voice, "First." Perfect. Eve cleared the screen, just in case, and turned to the link. "So, Nadine, what's the story?" "You're the story, Dallas. 2 dead people. It's dangerous to know you." "You're still breathing." "So far, so good. I thought you might be interested in some data that's come my way. We can do a trade. Show me yours, maybe I'll show you mine. Exclusive one-on-one in your home, with you discussing the investigation of both knifings for the noon broadcast." Eve didn't bother to snort. "One-on-one reporting the status of my investigation in my office for the evening broadcast. The first body was found at your house. I want in. It was found outside on the sidewalk, and you're not getting in." Nadine huffed out a breath. The pout was for her own benefit. She knew better than to think it would budge Eve. "I want the noon." Eve checked her watch, calculated, considered. "I'll clear you into my office. Arrival time 11:45. If I can make it, I'll be there. If not, damn it, we need setup time. 15 minutes isn't—" "It's enough, Nadine, for someone as good as you are. Be sure your data makes this worth my while." "Make sure you don't look like a rag picker," Nadine shot back. "Do something with your hair, for God's sake." Rather than respond, Eve ended transmission. "What is this obsession people have with my hair and wardrobe?" She raked a bad-tempered hand through the hair in question. "Mavis told me you're overdue for a style session. Leonardo's bummed about it." "You hanging with Mavis?" "I've gone down to catch her act a couple times." She blew her nose heartily. Over-the-counters were pure crap, she decided. "I like watching her." "I haven't had time for a style session," Eve muttered. "I trimmed it myself a couple days ago." "Yeah, I could tell." At Eve's narrow look, Peabody smiled blandly. "It looks just lovely, sir." "Kiss ass." Eve switched her screen back on. "And if you're finished with your critique of my personal appearance, maybe you'd like to run a few of these names." "I recognize some of them." Peabody bent over Eve's shoulder. "Louis Trevane, big-shot celebrity lawyer. Gets the stars out of legal jams. Mariana Bingsley, department store heiress and professional manhunter. Carlo Mancini, cosmetic enhancement guru. Medical doctor. You have to be way rich to have him even consider doing body sculpting on you." "I know the names, Peabody. I want background, personal data, financial data, medical data, any arrests. I want to know the names of their spouses and kids and pets. I want to know how and when they connected with Cross, and why they decided Satan was a cool guy." "It'll take days," Peabody said it mournfully, and reminded Eve painfully of Feeney. "Even shooting them into the IRCCA." Eve said nothing. The International Resource Center on Criminal Activity was one of Feeney's prides and joys. "If I could tag someone in the E Division for help, we could cut the time in half, maybe less." Peabody jerked a shoulder. "So, where do you want me to start?" "We've got to hop on Weinberg, so dig deeper there. And on Lobar. Robert Mathias. Then start at the top and work down. I'll start at the bottom and work up. Look for withdrawals of large amounts at regular intervals. We damn well better have what we need when we meet in the middle." She narrowed her eyes, thinking. The financial data on Selena's cult would be protected by the Privacy Act and its status as a registered religion. Still, there was a chance, a slim one, that she'd been cocky enough to make deposits in her personal account. That was a simple matter to check on. For the other, she would have to decide if the data would hold solid if she was able to access it, and to access it, she needed Rourke. She'd wait, she decided, a day or two. Once they ascertained how much money the membership list was suspected of feeding into Selena's pockets, she'd reassess. It would be tough to sell the PA on religious contributions as extortion, but it might be a start. With Weinberg's name linked to Cross's cult, I can pull her into interview. I think we'll make it, say, around 11:30. You've got the spot with Nadine at 11:45. Yeah. Eve's smile spread. That'll work. Oh. It's not my fault some big-nosed reporter finds out I'm questioning Selena Cross, knows I'm primary on 2 recent homicides, then puts 2 and 2 together, and goes on air with it. Might shake up some of these fine, upstanding Satanists. Some people get real chatty when they're shook. Get me that data, and I can shake them harder. I bow to you. Save it until we see if it works. You use this unit. I can use one of Rourke's to make the first pass. Computer, copy disk, print out hard copy. She glanced up at the movement in the doorway, went very still. Abort, she murmured, and braced to take the next hit from Feeney. Peabody? He sent her a quiet look out of sleep-starved eyes. I need a moment with your lieutenant. Sir? Though she rose, Peabody waited for Eve's signal. Take a break, Peabody. Get yourself some coffee. Yes, sir. She headed out, feeling the needles of edgy tension prickling the air. Eve didn't speak, simply stood. Her body was set, he noted, not to defend, but to absorb the next blow. Her eyes were carefully empty, but her hand that she braced on the desk shook. He stared at it a moment, amazed and ashamed that he'd caused that. Your, Somerset said I should just come up. It was warm in the room, but he didn't remove his rumpled overcoat. Instead, he shoved his hands in the pockets. I was off yesterday. Coming down on you was off. You were doing your job. He saw her lip tremble, as if she would speak or make some sound. Then she firmed it again and said nothing. She looked, he realized, whipped. You broke her heart. Her father beat her, tortured her, raped her. You've been her father for 10 years. How the hell was he supposed to deal with that? And how could he possibly ignore it? The things I said, I shouldn't have. He pulled his free to scrub them hard over his face. Jesus, Dallas, I'm sorry. Did you mean them? It was out before she could stop it. She held up a hand, turned away, stared blindly out the window. I wanted to mean them. I was pissed. He crossed to her, his hands flapping uselessly. I got no excuse, he began. He touched her, then snatched his fingers away from her shoulder when she cringed. I got no excuse, he said again after a steadying breath. And you got a right to step back from me. I jumped hard where I shouldn't have jumped. You don't trust me now. She skimmed the back of her hand over her cheek, ashamed the single tear had gotten past her guard. That's bullshit, Dallas. There's nobody I trust more. Look, goddammit, it takes a laser hit to get me to apologize to my own wife. I'm telling you, I'm sorry. Impatient now, he grabbed her arm, pulled her around. She froze. Her eyes were bright, tears sheening them, but not, thank Christ, falling. Don't go female on me, Dallas. I can't kick myself in the ass much harder than I already am. He jerked up his chin, tapped a finger on it. Go ahead. Free shot. We won't say anything about you punching out a superior officer. I don't want to hit you. God damn it, I outrank you. I said take your shot. A ghost of a smile flitted around her mouth. He looked so fierce, she thought, those drooping camel eyes sparkling with temper and frustration. Maybe after you shave, that stubble would skin my knuckles. Relief flooded through him at the slight curve of her lips. You're going soft, living the high life with that rich Irish son of a bitch. I beat hell out of a sparring droid last night, one of Rourke's finest. Yeah? Pride swelled in him, ridiculously. She tucked her tongue in her cheek. I pretended it was you. He grinned, took out the bag of candied almonds from his pocket, offered it. E-detectives don't have to use their fists. They use their brains. You taught me to use both. And to follow orders, he added, his eyes resting on hers again. I'd have been ashamed of you if you'd forgotten that. You did right, Dallas. For Frank, for the department, for me, he said, and watched her eyes swim again. Don't do that! His voice shook with the plea. "Don't start that shit, that's an order." She swiped the back of her hand under her nose. "I'm not doing anything." He waited a moment, just to be sure she wasn't going to lose it and embarrass them both. When her eyes cleared, he nodded in both relief and approval. "Good." He jiggled the bag in his hand. "Now, are you going to let me in?" She opened her mouth. "Shut it. I've seen Whitney," he told her. Feeney found he wanted to smile. This was the cop he'd trained. Solid, sturdy, and straight. Chewed him out in his own kitchen. "Did you?" She lifted her brows. "I'd like to have seen it." "Trouble was, once it was over, I had to agree with him. He'd picked the best cop for the job. I know you've been busting ass to push IAD out of the picture. Clear, Frank." "Me," he added. "And I know you've been working on finding out who did him and Alice." He had to take a breath because it hurt, still hurt. "I want in, Dallas. I'm going to tell you straight, I need in to clear this out of my gut. Whitney said it was up to you." The tension seeped out of her. She could give him this, give both of them this. Let's get to work. Eve was so pleased to have Selina cross an interview, she'd missed anticipating the obvious bonus of having her represented by Louis Trevane. She flashed grins at both of them as she secured the door to interview room A. "Miss Cross, I appreciate your cooperation. Mr. Trevane." "Eve." "Lieutenant Dallas," she corrected, snapping off the grin. "We're not socializing here." "You know each other?" Selina's eyes went icy. Pinder lawyer. "Your representative knows my husband on a social level. I'm acquainted with a number of attorneys in the city, Ms. Cross. This doesn't affect my or their job performance. We'll go on record." Eve engaged the recorder, recited the pertinent data. After reading the revised Miranda, she sat. "You've exercised your right to an attorney, Ms. Cross." "I certainly have. I've already been harassed by you twice, Lieutenant Dallas. I prefer continued harassment go on record." "Me too." Eve smiled. "You were acquainted with Robert Matthias, also known as Lobar." "He was Lobar," Selina corrected. "It was his chosen name." "Was" is the operative word, seeing as he's in a refrigerated unit at the morgue, and so is Thomas Weinberg. Are you acquainted with him?" "I don't believe I've had the pleasure." "Well, that's interesting. He was a member of your cult." Selina set her chin, waved away Trevane as he leaned forward to speak to her. "I can't be expected to recognize the name of every member of my church, Dallas. We are—" She spread her hands on the small table. "Legion." "Maybe this will refresh your memory." Eve opened a file, took a still out, and slid it across the table. Death shots were always ugly. Selina studied it with a small smile tugging at her mouth. A finger of the hand she wore, webbed again today, traced the spread of harsh red blood. "I can't say for certain. We meet in the dark." Her gaze lifted to Eve. "It's our way." "I can say for certain. Both he and Lobar were yours, and both were murdered with the style of knife used in your rituals." "An athame, yes. We are not the only religion who uses such an instrument in ceremony. I feel, after this violence, this persecution of members of my church, the police should be concerned with protecting us rather than pointing fingers. Obviously, there is a person or persons determined to eliminate us." "I figured you had your own protection. Doesn't your master look out for his own?" "Your mockery only shows your ignorance. Having sex with an 18-year-old delinquent shows yours. Did you have sex with Weinberg, too?" "I said I can't be sure I knew him. But if I did, I very likely had sex with him." "Selina!" Trevane cut her off, his voice firm. "You're goading my client, Lieutenant. She's stated she can't positively identify this victim." "She knew him. Both of you did. He was a weasel." "Do you know what a weasel is in cop speak, Ms. Cross? An informant." Eve rose, leaned over, bending her body close to Selina's. "Were you worried about how much he told me? Is that why you arranged for him to die? Were you having him followed?" She slanted her gaze toward Trevane briefly. "Maybe you have all your faithful followed." "I see whatever I need to see in the smoke." "Yeah, in the smoke. The psychic's version of the peeping Tom." It was risky for Weinberg to come by the viewing room. Why do you suppose he wanted to look at Alice? Had he been there the night she was drugged, raped? Did you let him have her? Alice was an initiate, a willing one. She was a child, a confused one. You like luring the young, don't you? They're so much more interesting than stubby fools like Weinberg, with their firm bodies, their malleable minds. People like Weinberg and the distinguished counsel here, they're just for the money and the cachet. But those like Alice, they're so tender, so tasty. Selina looked up smugly through her thick, dark lashes. She was. She enjoyed and was enjoyed. She didn't have to be lured, Dallas. She came to me. Now she's dead. 3 deaths. Your members must be getting nervous. Eve smiled thinly at Trevane. I would be. Martyrdom isn't new, Dallas. People have been killed because of their faith for centuries, and still the faith survives. We'll survive. We'll triumph. Eve took out another still, slapped it on the table. He didn't. It was Lobar, his mutilated body caught in the garish lights of the crime scene. The wound on his throat gaped open like a scream. It was Trevane who Eve watched. His eyes blinked rapidly, horror flickering through. His skin went pasty, and his chest rose and fell in jerks. He didn't survive, Eve said softly. Did he, Selina? His death is a symbol. He will not be forgotten. Do you own an athame? I own several, naturally. Like this? She took out another photo, this one a close-up of the weapon left pinned into Lobar. Blood crusted the blade. I have several, Selina repeated. Some similar to this, as one might expect, but I don't recognize this particular one. Hallucinogens were found in Lobar's system, used drugs during rituals. Herbals, and some chemicals. All legal. Not everything found in Lobar's system was on the legal list. I can't be responsible for the choices other people make. He was with you the night he died. Was he using? He had taken the ritual wine. If he took something otherwise, it was without my knowledge. You have priors as a chemi-dealer, and paid my debt to so-called society. You have nothing on me, Lieutenant. I have 3 bodies, and they're yours. I've got a dead cop, and he's on you, too. I'm closing in on you, Selina, step by step. Keep out of my face. Or, do you know pain, Dallas? Selina's voice went low and thick. Do you know the pain that eats at the stomach like drops of acid spreading? You beg for relief, but none comes. The pain becomes agony, and agony almost pleasure. The pain becomes so intense, so unspeakable, that if a knife came into your hand, you would gladly slice through your own guts to cut out the source of it. Would I? Eve said coolly. Would I really? I can offer you that. I can offer you pain. Eve smiled, and her smile was slow and humorless. That slips into the area of threatening a police officer, and that'll get you some time in a cage until your lawyer finesses you out again. You bitch! Furious that she'd been trapped so neatly and with so little effort, Selina sprang to her feet. You can't hold me for that! Sure I can. Selina Cross, you're under arrest for verbal threat to physically harm a police officer. She was fast, but Eve's reflexes were sharp. She blocked the first blow as Selina flew at her, but the second rapid swipe caught her along the throat with those lethal dark nails. She smelled her own blood and indulged herself by bringing her elbow up to ram Selina's chin. The dark eyes rolled back, went glassy. Looks like we had resisting arrest. You're going to have your hands full for the next couple hours, Counselor. He hadn't moved. Not a muscle. Trevane continued to sit, staring at the photos of the dead. When Feeney opened the door, a uniform behind him, Eve nodded. Booker, she ordered. Verbal threat and resisting. Selina staggered as Eve passed her to the uniform, but her eyes cleared and fixed on Eve's face with bubbling malice. She began to speak softly, in a chant that rose and fell almost musically. She swiveled her head, looking over her shoulder as the uniform took her out. Eve dabbed fingers on her throat, disgusted when they came away smeared with blood. "Did you catch what she was saying there?" Feeney took out a handkerchief, handed it to her. "Sounded like Latin. Bastardized some. My mother made me learn when I was a kid. Had delusions about me becoming a priest. See if you can make out any of it from the record. We may be able to add to the charges." "Shit, this burns." "Interview is concluded," she added, and logged the time and date. "Trevane, you want to talk to me?" "What?" He looked over, swallowed, shook his head. "I'll see my client, Lieutenant, as soon as she's booked. These charges won't hold." Eve held out her bloody fingers. "Oh, I think they will. Take a good look, Lewis." She stepped closer, jammed her fingers under his nose. "It could be yours next time." "I'll see my client," he repeated, and his face was still white as death as he hurried from the room. "That bitch is loony," Feeney commented. "Tell me something I don't know." "She hates your ever-fucking guts," he said pleasantly, happy to be in tandem again. "But you knew that, too. Put the hoodoo on you." "Huh?" "Cursed you." He winked at her. "Let me know if you start getting stomach cramps. You're starting to get to her." "Not enough," Eve murmured. "But my money's on the lawyer. Let's keep a man on him, Feeney. I don't want him ending up dead before he breaks." It was the way he looked at the shot of Lobar. Shock, then something like recognition. She shook her head. "Let's not lose him." She glanced at her watch, hummed with satisfaction. "Just in time to make my nooner with Nadine. You want to have that neck looked after. Nasty." Later. She headed out, moving fast. Nadine wouldn't miss the injury, nor, Eve thought, would the all-seeing eye of the camera. "What the hell happened to you?" Nadine demanded. She stopped pacing, stopped looking at her watch. "Little problem in interview." "You cut it close, Dallas. We got 2 minutes before air. You don't have time to clean up." "Fine, look we are." "Get a voice and light level," Nadine told her camera operator. She took out a mirrored compact, polishing up her face when she sat. "Looks like female," she added. "Long, nasty nails, 4 separate grooves." "Yeah." Eve patted the already stained handkerchief against the wound. "Somebody was curious. They could check booking, get the data." Nadine's eyes went sharp. "I imagine someone could," she purred. "You didn't do anything with your hair." "I cut it. I meant anything constructive. Coming up in 30. Set, Susanna?" The operator made a circle of forefinger and thumb. "The fresh blood shows up real good. Nice touch." "Gee, thanks." Eve settled back, hooked one booted foot over her knee. "Let's keep this short, Nadine. I haven't seen yours yet." "Here's a preview, then. What local white witch is the son of infamous mass murderer David Baines Conroy, who is currently doing 5 separate life stretches, no parole options, in maximum lockup on Penal Station Omega?" "Who? In 5?" Nadine said sweetly, delighted to have snagged Eve's full attention. 4, 3... She signaled the last of the countdown with her fingers below camera level. On cue, she stared into the camera with sober eyes. "Good afternoon. This is Nadine First, leading off the noon hour with an exclusive interview with Homicide Lieutenant Eve Dallas in her office at Cop Central." Eve was prepared for the questions. She knew Nadine's style well, too well to allow herself to be rattled by the information that had been dumped on her seconds before airtime, as, she imagined, Nadine had hoped. She answered briefly, carefully, and knew she was bumping up Channel 75's and Nadine's rating points with every on-the-air second. "The department is proceeding with the belief that the cases are connected, as evidence indicates. Though different weapons were left at the scene of each murder, they are of similar style." "Can you describe the weapons?" "I can't comment on that." "But they were knives." "They were sharp instruments. I'm not at liberty to go into any more detail. Doing so would jeopardize our investigation at this point." "The second victim. You were pursuing him at the time of his death. Why?" She was ready for this, had already decided to exploit the question for her own benefit. Thomas Weinberg had indicated he had information which would be useful to my investigation. What information? Zip, Eve thought, but kept her eyes level. I'm not at liberty to divulge that. I can only say we spoke, and he became agitated and ran. I pursued. And he was killed. That's correct. Running didn't help him. Annoyed that her director indicated her time was up through her earpiece, Nadine wound the interview to a close. And we're clear. Susanna, Nadine simply gestured to the door and sent her operator out. Off the record, she began. Nope. Gimme. All right, then. Nadine sat back, crossed her pretty legs. Charles Forte took his mother's maiden name legally 12 years ago after his father was convicted of the ritual slayings of 5 people. It's believed he killed countless others, but it's never been proved. The bodies have never been found. I know the story behind Conroy. I didn't know he had a kid. That was kept locked. Privacy Act. The family was already out of it. The mother had divorced and relocated a few years before Baines was caught. The kid was 16 when she took him and left. 21 when his father was tried and convicted. My sources claim the son attended court every day. Eve thought of the small, unassuming man she'd met at Alice's viewing. Son of a monster. How much of that came through the blood? She thought of her own father, nearly shuddered. I appreciate it. If it comes to anything, I'll owe you. Yes, you will. I've got lots of data on cults in the city. Nothing as dramatic as this, but it may lead somewhere. Meanwhile, if you were in interview with someone pissed off enough to try to slice your jugular, should I assume you have a suspect? Eve studied her nails. She supposed some would have said she was overdue for a manicure. I can't comment on that. You know, Nadine, cameras aren't allowed down in booking. Damn shame. Thanks for the spot, Dallas. I'll be in touch. Do that. Eve watched her stroll out, had no doubt Nadine was making tracks to booking, and that Selina Cross was going to have her name broadcast by the end of the noon report. All in all, she decided, not a bad morning. Wincing, she dragged through her drawers, hoping for a first aid kit. Chapter 15. I won't make it home. Eve juggled the call to Rourke while her computer searched for all data on David Baines Conroy. Can you swing by here about 6? We can drive upstate for the witch party. Rourke lifted an elegant brow. As long as it's not in your vehicle. He frowned, gestured. Come a little closer to the screen. What now? He asked. What do you mean, what now? I'm busy. No, your neck. Oh, that. She touched her fingers to the still raw scratches. She'd never found that first aid kit. A difference of opinion. I won. Naturally. Put something on it, Lieutenant. I should be able to make it there by 6:30. We can eat on the way. Fine. Eat on the way? She thought. Wait a minute. Don't bring the limo. He only smiled. 6:30. I mean it, Rourke. Don't. She hissed when the screen blanked. Damn. With a sigh, she swiveled back to the computer. The IRCCA was a fount of data on this one, she thought. She skimmed through, pausing over pertinent facts on David Baines Conroy. Divorced. 1 child, male, Charles, born January 22, 2025. Custody awarded to mother, Ellen Forte. Big surprise, Eve thought. Mass murderers weren't generally given custody of minor children. Let's get down to it, she murmured. Charges and convictions. Charged and convicted, murder in the first, torture killing, posthumous rape and dismemberment of Doreen Harden, mixed-race female, age 23, sentenced to life, maximum facility, no parole option. Charged and convicted, murder in the first, rape, torture killing, and dismemberment of Emma Tangent, black female, age 25, sentenced to life, maximum facility, no parole option. Charged and convicted, murder in the first, sodomy, rape, torture killing, and dismemberment of Lowell McBride, white male, age 18, sentenced to life, maximum facility, no parole option. Charged and convicted. Murder in the first. Rape, torture, killing, and dismemberment of Darla Fitz, mixed-race female, age 23. Sentenced to life, maximum facility, no parole options. Charged and convicted. Murder in the first. Sodomy, posthumous rape, torture, killing, and dismemberment of Martin Savoy, mixed-race male, age 20. Sentenced to life, maximum facility, no parole options. Currently serving term on Penal Station Omega. Suspected of 12 additional murders, cases open. Insufficient evidence to charge. Primary investigators available on request. List primaries, Eve ordered, and watched as names and data scrolled. Moved around, did you, Conroy? She muttered, noting that the detectives in charge were scattered all over the country. She'd still been a teenager when Conroy had dominated the news. She remembered snatches, weeping family members begging Conroy to tell them where to find the remains of loved ones, grim-faced cops giving statements, and Conroy himself, a quiet face slashed with vicious dark eyes. They'd called him evil, she remembered, the Antichrist. That was the term used over and over again to describe him, to try, perhaps, to separate him from the human. But he'd been human enough to conceive a child, a son, and that son was on her current list of suspects. Maybe, just maybe, she'd been focused too relentlessly on Selina Cross. The son was drawn to power, she mused. Witchcraft was about power, wasn't it? He'd known at least one of the victims, and 2 had been killed with a knife. Conroy had been very handy with a knife. He'd also claimed to have been the instrument of a god, she recalled, scanning data. Yes, there, in one of his rambling statements, she highlighted. Give me audio on this. Working. I am a force beyond you, Conroy's voice crooned out. Beautiful diction, almost musical. The son's voice, Eve thought, was equally charismatic. I am the instrument of the god of vengeance and pain. What I do in his name is grand. Tremble before me, for I will never be vanquished. I am Legion. You are garbage, Eve corrected. Legion. Cross had used the same term. Interesting. Had Conroy dabbled in Satanism, she wondered, in witchcraft? And had the son been attracted to the same areas? Just how much, she wondered, did Charles Forte know about his father's work? And how did he feel about it? Computer, run Charles Forte of this city, formerly Charles Conroy, son of David Baines Conroy. All data. Working. As the information beeped on, she tapped her fingers on the desk and considered. The mother had taken her son to New York, which meant, Eve mused, that the boy had traveled back to attend the trial. He'd made the effort, likely over his mother's objections. Dropped out of college second term. Studied pharmaceuticals. Very interesting. Licensed as a chemical drone. Worked on drug cloning and manufacture. Moved around quite a bit, she noted, like his dear old dad. Then settled back in New York, co-owner of Spirit Quest. She leaned back, unconsciously rubbing her wounded throat. No marriages, no children, no arrests. She played a hunch. Medical data. Charles Forte, age 6, broken hand. Age 6, minor concussion, abdominal bruising. Age 7, second-degree burns, forearms. Age 7, concussion and fractured tibia. The list went on through childhood in a pattern that made Eve's stomach clench. Hold. Probability of child abuse? Probability 98%. Why the hell wasn't it picked up? Medical records indicate treatment was issued at varying hospitals in varying cities over course of 10 years. No record of requested search through National Child Abuse Prevention Agency. Idiots, idiots. She rubbed her hands over her face, pressing hard on the headache now brewing in the center of her forehead. It was too close to home. List any psychiatric treatment or available psychological profiles. Subject entered Miller Clinic voluntarily as outpatient. Doctor of record, Ernest Renfrew, from February 2045 to September 2047. File sealed. No other data. Okay, that's enough to chew on. Save data. File. Forte Charles. Case number 34299-H. Cross-reference Conroy. Disengage when complete. She glanced up as Feeney stuck his head in her doorway. Cross just got sprung. Well, it was too good to last. You have anybody look at those cat scratches? I will. Got a minute? Sure. David Baines Conroy. Feeney whistled, made himself comfortable on the corner of her desk. That's going back. Sick bastard. Cut his victims up when he was done with them. Kept the parts in a portable cold box. Had a trailer, traveled around. Preaching. Preaching? Well, that's not exactly the term. Set himself up as a sort of antichrist. Lots of shit about anarchy, freedom to pursue carnal pleasures, opening the gates of hell, that sort of thing. Figures he plucked most of his victims off the road. Itinerant LCs. At least 3 they pinned on him were licensed companions. Hookers have always been easy marks for psychos. He was found competent to stand trial. Passed the tests. Legally, he was sane. In reality, a real wacko. He had a family. Yeah, that's right. Feeney closed his eyes to try to bring it back. I was still working homicide then, and there wasn't a cop on planet who wasn't personally caught up by the case. Never did any of his work here that we know of, but I remember he had a wife. Pale, jumpy little woman. Left him before he got snagged, seems to me. And there was a kid, a boy. Spooky. Why? He had his old man's eyes. Except they were dead, you know? I remember thinking we might be tracking him one day, in his father's footsteps. Then they ducked under the Privacy Act and nobody ever heard of him again. Until now. Eve kept her eyes level. I'm seeing Conroy's son tonight. At a witch's coven. Rourke brought the limo. She'd been certain he would, just to annoy her. She'd have stayed annoyed if he hadn't seen that the auto chef was stocked, Italian style. Eve was wolfing down manicotti before they crossed the Jacqueline Onassis Bridge, but she shook her head at the burgundy he poured. I'm on duty, she said with her mouth full. I'm not. He sipped, studied her. Why haven't you taken care of that? He asked, brushing gentle fingers over her throat. I got tied up. Not something we've yet to explore. He smiled genially when she goggled at him. Just a thought. I caught the replay of your little tete-a-tete with Nadine on the way over to Central. I'm surprised you agreed to it. It was a trade. I got my share. She leaned forward, engaged the privacy shield between them and the driver. And I'd better fill you in before we join in tonight's festivities. She detailed the new line she was pursuing, then sampled one of the sweet fat olives on the antipasto tray. It bumps them up a few notches on the list, she concluded. The sins of the father. Sometimes it works that way. He said nothing a moment. They both had reason to be uncomfortable with the theory. You know best, Lieutenant. But isn't it just as likely circumstances would push him to the opposite pole? He knew Alice. He has knowledge of chemicals. Her grandfather had chemicals in his system, and she'd been hallucinating. The other 2 victims were ritual slayings. Forte belongs to a cult. I can't ignore the steps. He looked remarkably unhomicidal to me. She poked through the antipasto, selected a marinated pepper. I once took down this little old lady. Looked like everybody's favorite granny. She took in stray cats and baked cookies for the neighborhood kids. Grew geraniums on her windowsill. Enjoying the bite, Eve chose another pepper. She'd lured 6 kids into her apartment and had fed their internal organs to the kitties before we nailed her. Charming story. Rourke slipped his plate into the holding slot. Point taken. Reaching into his pocket, he took out the amulet Isis had given him the night before, slipped it over Eve's neck. What's this for? It looks better on you than me. She narrowed her eyes at him. Bull! You're being superstitious. No, I'm not, he lied, and set her plate in with his before he shifted and began to unbutton her shirt. Hey, what are you doing? Passing the time. His hands, clever and quick, swooped down to take her breasts. "It'll take an hour to get there by car." "I'm not having sex in the back of a limo," she told him. "It's delicious," he finished, and replaced his hands with his mouth. She felt remarkably limber and relaxed by the time the limo turned onto a narrow country road. Here the trees were plentiful, the stars brilliant, and the dark complete. Half-denuded trees arched over the roadway, tunneling them in. She caught the glinting gold eyes of what might have been a fox as a shadow darted across the road and into the woods. "Feeney and Peabody still behind us?" Rourke tucked his shirt back into his trousers. "It would seem so." "You're putting that on inside out," he said mildly, and grinned. "Hell." Eve struggled back out of the shirt, pulled the arms through, and tried again. "Don't look so smug. I just pretended to enjoy that." "Darling Eve." He took her hand, kissed it. "You're too good to me." "You're telling me." She slipped the amulet off, looped it over his head. "You wear it." Before he could object, she caught his face in her hands. "Please." "You don't believe in it anyway." "No." She tucked it under his shirt, patted it. "But I think you do." "Your driver knows where he's going?" "The directions from ISIS are programmed in." He checked his watch. "By my calculations, we should be nearly there." "Looks like we're nowhere, if you ask me." She stared out the window. Nothing but dark, trees, and more dark. "I'd rather be on my own turf. Hard to believe there's this much nothing less than 2 hours' drive from New York." "You're such an urbanite." "And you're not?" He moved his shoulders. "The country's an interesting place to visit for short periods of time. Quiet can be restful." "It makes me edgy." They turned onto another winding road. "And everything looks the same. There's no action," she decided. "Now you stroll into Central or Greenpeace Park, and you're bound to run into a mugger or a chemiehead at least, maybe an unlicensed hooker, couple of perverts." She glanced back, saw he was grinning at her. "What?" "Life with you has such color." She snorted, strapped on her sidearm. "Yeah, like everything was gray in your little world before I came along. All that wine, women, and money must have been pretty tedious." "The ennui," he said on a sigh, "was unspeakable. I might have faded away from it if you hadn't tried to hang a murder or two on me." "Just your lucky day." She caught the glimmer of lights through the trees as the car turned up a steep, rutted incline. "Thank Christ. Looks like the party's already underway." "Try not to sneer." Rourke patted her knee. "It would offend our hosts." "I'm not going to sneer." She already was. "I want impressions, not just of Forte, of everybody. And if you happen to recognize a face, let me know." She took a small device out of her bag, slipped it into her pocket. "Micro-recorder?" Rourke clucked his tongue. "I believe that's illegal, not to mention rude." "I don't know what you're talking about." "And unnecessary," he added. He turned his wrist, tapped a tiny button on the side of his watch. "This one is much more efficient. I should know. I manufacture both brands." He smiled as the car stopped at the edge of a small clearing. "I believe we've arrived." Eve spotted Isis first. She was impossible to miss. The sheer white robe she wore seemed to glow out of the dark like moonlight. Her hair was left long and loose, flowing over her shoulders. A gold band, studded with colored stones, circled her brow. Her long, narrow feet were bare. "Blessed be," she said, and disconcerted Eve by kissing both her cheeks. She greeted Rourke the same way, then turned back to Eve. "You're injured." Before Eve could respond, she lay fingers against the scratches. "Poison." "Poison?" Eve had visions of vicious nails dipped into a slow-acting brew that crept through the bloodstream. "Not of the physical, but of the spiritual kind. I feel Selina here." Her eyes stayed on Eve's as she lowered her hand to Eve's shoulder. "This won't do. Miriam, please welcome our other guests." She spoke to a small, dark-skinned woman as Feeney's rattletrap of a car bumped up the road. Chaz will see to your wound. It's fine. I'll see an MT in the morning. I don't think that will be necessary. Please, come this way. It's unhealthy to have even this much of her here. She led the way around the clearing. Eve could see a wide circle formed by a ring of white candles. People stood outside it, chatting, she mused, as they might at a midtown cocktail party. Dress varied, robes, suits, long and short skirts. 20 in all, by her count, ranging in age from 18 to 80, with a mixture of race and gender. There seemed no specific type. Coolers were stacked nearby, which, she supposed, explained why several members were sipping drinks. Conversation was muted, punctuated by the occasional laugh. Chaz turned from a folding table as they approached. He wore a simple blue unisuit and soft shoes in the same tone. He smiled, noting Eve's suspicious scan of the table. "Witches' tools," he told her. Red cords, a white-handled knife, an athame, she thought. She saw more candles, a small brass gong, a whip, a gleaming silver sword, colored bottles, bowls, and cups. Interesting. It's an old ritual, requiring old tools. But you're hurt. He took a step toward her, his hand lifting, then pausing when she aimed a cool, warning look. I beg your pardon. It looks painful. Chaz is a healer. Isis curved her lips in challenge. Consider this a demonstration. After all, you did come to observe, didn't you? And your mate wears protection. And so, Eve thought, feeling the comfortable weight of her weapon, did she. Okay, demonstrate. She tilted her head, inviting Chaz to examine the scratches. His fingers were surprisingly cool, surprisingly soothing as they played over her abraded skin. She kept her eyes on his, watched them focus, then flicker. You are fortunate, he murmured. The result didn't equal the intent. Will you relax your mind? His gaze lifted from his hand, met hers. The mind and body are one, he said quietly in that lovely voice. One guides the other. One heals the other. Let me ease this. She thought she felt warmth move through her, from the point where his fingers lay, into her head, down through her body, until a drowsiness seeped through. She jerked herself alert, saw him smile quietly. I won't hurt you. He turned, picked up an amber bottle, uncorked the stopper, and dabbed clear, floral-scented liquid on his hands. This is a balm, an old recipe with modern additions. He spread it gently, his fingers following the path Selena's nails had raked. It will heal clean, and there will be no more discomfort. You know your chemicals, don't you? This is an herbal base. He took a cloth from his pocket, wiped his fingers. But yes, I do. I'd like to talk to you about that. She waited a beat, her eyes keen. And about your father. She saw the demand hit home in the way his pupils dilated, then contracted. Then Isis was stepping between them, fury glorious on her face. You've been invited here. This place is sacred. You have no right— Isis. Chaz touched her arm. She has a mission. We all do. He looked at Eve, seemed to gather himself. Yes, I'll speak with you, when you wish, but this isn't the place to bring despair. The ceremony's about to begin. We won't stop you. Will tomorrow, 9 o'clock at Spirit Quest, be suitable? That's fine. Excuse me. Do you always repay kindness with pain? Isis demanded in a furious undertone as Chaz stepped away. Then she shook her head, aimed her gaze deliberately at Rourke. You are welcome to observe, and we hope you and your companions will show the proper respect for our rite tonight. You aren't permitted within the magic circle. As she swept away, Eve slipped her hands into her pockets. Well, now I've got 2 witches pissed off at me. She looked over as Peabody hurried to her side. It's an initiation, Peabody whispered. I got it from the big gorgeous witch in the Italian suit. She smiled across the clearing at a man with burnished bronze hair and a 1,000,000-watt smile. Jesus, makes a woman consider converting. Get a grip on yourself, Peabody. Eve nodded at Feeney. My sainted mother would be saying 6 rosaries tonight if she knew where I was. He pushed on a grin to cover nerves. Damn spooky place. Nothing out here but a lot of nothing. Rourke sighed, slipped an arm around Eve's waist. Cut from the same cloth, he murmured, and turned as the rite began. The young woman Isis had called Miriam stood outside the circle of candles and was bound and blindfolded by 2 men. Everyone, but for the observers, was now naked. Skin glowed, white and dark and gold in the streaming moonlight. Deeper in the woods, nightbirds called liltingly. Itchy, Eve slid a hand inside her jacket, felt the weight of her weapon. The red cords were used for the binding of the initiate, leaving a kind of tether. As the ankle cord was attached, Chaz spoke. Feet neither bound nor free. And there was unmistakable joy and reverence in his voice. Curious, Eve watched the casting of the circle, the opening ritual. The mood was, she had to admit, happy. Overhead the moon swam, sprinkling light, silvering the trees. Owls hooted, an odd sound that rippled through her blood. Nudity seemed to be ignored. There was none of the surreptitious groping or sly glances she knew she'd have seen at any city sex club. Chaz took up the athame, making Eve's hand close on her weapon as he held it to the postulant's heart. He spoke, his words rising and falling on the smoky breeze. I have 2 passwords, Miriam answered. Perfect love and perfect trust. He smiled. All who have such are doubly welcome. I give you a 3rd to pass you through this dread door. He handed the knife to the man beside him, then kissed Miriam. As a father might kiss a child, Eve thought, frowning. Chaz walked around the postulant, embraced her, then gently nudged her forward into the circle. Behind them, the second man traced the tip of the athame over the empty space as if to close them in. There was chanting now, as Chaz led Miriam around the circle, as she was turned by hands after hands in a playful child's dizziness and disorientation. A bell rang 3 times. It was Chaz who knelt, speaking, then kissing the postulant's feet, her knees, her belly just above the pubis, her breasts, then her lips. She'd thought it would be sexual, Eve mused, but it had been more loving than that. Impressions, she murmured to Rourke. Charming and powerful. Religious. He slid his hand up and covered the one that still curled around her weapon, gently tugging it away. And harmless. Sexual, certainly, but in a very balanced and respectful sense. And yes, I see 1 or 2 people I recognize. I'll want names. As the rite continued, she reached up absently to rub her throat. She found the skin smooth, unbroken, and free of pain. As she dropped her hand, Chaz looked at her, met her eyes, and smiled again. Chapter 16. Spirit Quest wasn't open for business when Eve arrived with Peabody, but Chaz was there, waiting on the sidewalk, sipping something that steamed out of a recycle cup. Good morning. The air was just chilled enough to have slapped color into his cheek. I wonder if we could talk upstairs, in our apartment, rather than in the shop. Cops bad for business? Eve asked. Well, we could say that the early customers might be disconcerted. And we do open in half an hour. I assume you don't need Isis. Not at the moment. I appreciate it. If you could, give me just a moment. He shot her a sheepish look. Isis prefers not to have caffeine in the house. I'm weak, he said, taking another sip. She knows I sneak off every morning to feed my addiction and pretends not to. It's foolish, but it makes us happy. Take your time. You get that across the street? That would be a little too close to home. And to be honest, the coffee's filthy there. They make a decent cup down at the corner deli. He sipped again with obvious pleasure. I gave up cigarettes years ago, even herbals, but I can't quite do without a cup of coffee. Did you enjoy the ceremony last night? It was interesting. Since the morning air was sharp, she tucked her ungloved hands in her pockets. Traffic, both street and air, was beginning to thin a little with the first commuter rush passing. Getting a little brisk to run around naked in the woods, isn't it? Yes, we probably won't hold any more outdoor ceremonies this year. Certainly not sky-clad. But Miriam had her heart set on being initiated to first-degree witch before Samhain. Samhain? Halloween, he and Peabody said together. She shuffled her feet as he smiled at her. Free-ager, she muttered. Ah, there are some basic similarities. He finished off his coffee, stepped over to a recycling bin, and neatly slipped the cup in the slot. You have a cold, officer. Yes, sir, Peabody sniffled, determinedly blocked a sneeze. I have something that should ease that. One of our members recognized you, Lieutenant. She said she'd given you a reading lately. On the night, actually, that Alice died. That's right. Cassandra is very skilled and very sweet-natured. Chaz began as he started up the steps. She feels she should have been able to see more clearly, to tell you that Alice was in danger. She believes you are. He paused, looked back. She hoped that you're still carrying the stone she gave you. It's around somewhere. He let out a sound that might have been a sigh. How's your neck? Good as new. I see it's healed cleanly. Yeah, and quickly. What was in that stuff you put on it? Humor flickered in his eyes, surprising her. Oh, just some tongue of bat, a little eye of newt. He opened the door to a musical chime of bells. Please be comfortable. I'll get you some tea to warm you up since I kept you standing. You don't have to bother. It's no bother at all. Just be a moment. He slipped through a doorway, and Eve took the time to study his living quarters. She wouldn't call them simple. Obviously, a lot of the stock from the shelves downstairs made its way up here. Large, many-speared hunks of crystals decorated an oval table and circled a copper urn filled with fall flowers. An intricate tapestry hung on the wall over a curved blue sofa. Men and women, suns and moons, a castle with flames spewing from the arrow slits. The major arcana, Peabody told her, as Eve stepped up for a closer look. She sneezed once, violently, and dug out a tissue. The tarot. It looks old, hand-worked. Expensive, Eve decided. Art such as this didn't come cheaply. There were statues in pewter, and carved from smooth stone. Wizards and dragons, two-headed dogs, sinuous women with delicate wings. Another wall was covered with odd, attractive symbols in splashes of color. From the Book of Kells. Peabody lifted her shoulders at Eve's curious glance. My mother likes to embroider the symbols, like on pillows and samplers. They look nice. It's a nice place. And it didn't give her the willies like the Cross apartment. Eccentric, but nice. Business must be good for them to be able to afford the antiques, the metalwork, the art. The business does well enough, Chaz said as he came back with a tray laden with a flower-patterned ceramic pot and cups. And I had some resources of my own before we opened. Inheritance? No. He set the tray down on a circular coffee table. Savings, investments. Chemical engineers are well paid. But you gave it all up to work retail. I gave it up, he said simply. I was unhappy in my work. I was unhappy in my life. Therapy didn't help. He met her eyes again, though it seemed to cost him. It didn't hurt. Please sit down. I'll answer your questions. She can't make you go through this, Chaz. Isis slipped into the room like smoke. Her gown was gray today, the color of storm clouds, and swirled around her ankles as she moved to him. You're entitled to your privacy, under any law. I can insist that he answer my questions, Eve corrected. I'm investigating murder here. He is, of course, entitled to counsel. It isn't a lawyer he needs, but peace. Isis whirled, her eyes alive with emotion, and Chaz took her hands, lifted them to his lips, pressed his face to them. I have peace, he said quietly. I have you. Don't worry so. You have to go down and open, and I have to do this. Let me stay. He shook his head, and the look they exchanged had Eve staring in surprise. It was baffling enough to speculate on their physical relationship, but what she saw pass between them wasn't sex. It was love. It was devotion. It should have been laughable, the way Isis had to lean down, bend that goddess body to reach his lips with hers. Instead, it was poignant. You have only to call, she told him, only to wish for me. I know. He gave her hand a quick, intimate pat to send her off. She shot Eve one last look of barely controlled rage and swept out. I doubt I would have survived without her, Chaz said as he stared at the door. You're a strong woman, Lieutenant. It would be difficult for you to understand that kind of need, that kind of dependence. Once she would have agreed. Now she wasn't so sure. I'd like to record this conversation, Mr. Forte. Yes, of course. He sat, and as Peabody engaged her recorder, mechanically poured the tea. He listened without glancing up as Eve recited the traditional caution. Do you understand your rights and obligations? Yes. Would you care for sweetener? She looked down at her tea with some impatience. It smelled suspiciously like what Mira insisted on serving her. No. I've added a bit of honey to yours, officer. He sent Peabody a sweet smile, and a bit of something else. I think you'll find it soothing. Smells pretty good. Cautious, Peabody sipped, tasted home, and smiled back. Thanks. When's the last time you saw your father? Caught off guard by the abruptness of Eve's question, Chaz looked up quickly. The hand holding his cup shook once, violently. The day he was sentenced. I went to the hearing and I watched them take him away. They kept him in full restraints, and they closed and locked the door on his life. And how did you feel about that? Ashamed, relieved, desperately unhappy, or perhaps just desperate. He was my father. Took a deep gulp of tea, as some might take a gulp of whiskey. I hated him with all of my heart, all of my soul. Because he killed? Because he was my father. I hurt my mother deeply by insisting on attending his trial, but she was too battered emotionally to stop me from doing as I chose. She could never stop him either, though she did leave him eventually. She took me and left him, which was, I think, a surprise to all of us. He stared down into his cup, as if contemplating the pattern of the leaves skimming the bottom. I hated her, too, for a very, very long time. Hate can define a person, can't it, Lieutenant? It can twist them into an ugly shape. Is that what happened to you? Nearly. Ours was not a happy home. You wouldn't expect that it could be with a man like my father dominating it. You suspect I could be like him. Chaz's sensual voice remained calm, but his eyes were swirling with emotions. It was the eyes you watched during interview, Eve thought. The words often meant nothing. Are you? Blood will tell. Is that Shakespeare? He shook his head a little. I'm not quite sure. But isn't that what all children live with and fear, no matter what their parents? That blood will tell? She lived with it. She feared it, but she couldn't allow herself to be swayed by it. How strong an influence was he on your life? There couldn't have been a stronger one. You're an efficient investigator, Lieutenant. I'm sure you've studied the records by now, run the discs, watched them. You would have seen a charismatic man, terrifyingly so, a man who considered himself above the law, any and all laws. That kind of steely arrogance is in itself compelling. Evil can be compelling to some. Yes. His lips curved without humor. You'd know that in your line of work. He wasn't a man you could fight on a physical or emotional level. He's strong. Very strong. Chaz closed his eyes a moment, reliving what he was constantly struggling to put to death. I was afraid I could be like him, considered giving back the most precious gift I'd been given, life. You attempted self-termination? I never got as far as the attempt, just the plan. The first time, I was 10. He sipped tea again, determined to soothe himself. Can you imagine a child of 10 pondering suicide? Yes, she thought she could all too well. She'd been younger yet when she had pondered it. He abused you? Abuse is such a weak term, don't you think? He beat me. He never seemed to be in a rage when he did. He just struck out at unexpected moments, snapping a bone, raising a fist, with the absent calm another man might display while flicking away a fly. His fist was clenched on his knee. Deliberately, Chaz opened his hand, spread his fingers. He struck like a shark, fast and in utter silence. There was never a warning, never a gauge. My life, my pain was totally dependent on his whim. I've had my time in hell, he said softly, almost as a prayer. No one helped you? Eve asked. Attempted to intervene? We never stayed in one place very long, and were allowed to form no attachments or friendships. He claimed he needed to spread the word, and he would snap a bone, raise a fist, then take me into a treatment center himself, a concerned father. You told no one. He was my father. It was my life. Chaz lifted his hands, let them fall. Who was I to tell? Neither had she told anyone, Eve thought. Neither had she had anyone to tell. And for quite a while, I believed him when he said it was just. Chaz's eyes flickered, and I certainly believed him when he told me there would be terrible pain and terrible punishment if I said anything. I was 13 when he sodomized me for the first time. It was a ritual, he told me, when he bound my hands and I wept, a rite of passage. Sex was life. It was necessary to take it. He would take me on the journey as was his duty and his right. He picked up the teapot, poured, set it neatly aside. I don't know if it was rape. I didn't struggle. I didn't beg him to stop. I simply cried without sound and submitted. It was rape, Peabody said, and her voice was very quiet. Well, he found he couldn't drink the tea he'd just poured, but lifted the cup, held it. I told no one. Even years later, when they had him in a cage, I didn't tell the police. I didn't believe they would hold him. I simply didn't believe they could. He was too strong, too powerful, and all the blood on his hands seemed to add to it. Oddly enough, it was the sex that pushed my mother to run and take me. Not the violence, not the little boy with broken bones, or even the deaths I think she knew he'd caused. It was the sight of him kneeling over me on his altar with the black candles lit. He didn't see her, but I did. I saw her face when she stepped into the room. She left me there, let him finish with me. And that night, when he went out, we ran. And still she didn't go to the police. No. He looked at Eve. I know you believe if she had, lives might have been saved, but fear is a very personal emotion. Survival was her only goal. When they arrested him, I went to the trial every day. I was sure he would stop it somehow. Even when they said they would lock him away, I still didn't believe it. I erased his name, and I tried to slip into normality. I took a job that interested me, that I had some talent for, and I allowed myself to get close to no one. There was a rage in me. I would look at a face and hate it because it was happy, or it was sad. I hated them all for their unshadowed existence. And like my father, I didn't stay in one place very long. And when I found myself considering suicide again with great calm and great seriousness, I was frightened enough to seek help. He was able to smile again. It was, though I didn't realize it at the time, the beginning for me, taking that step, allowing myself to speak the unspeakable. I learned to accept my own innocence and to forgive my mother. But the rage was still there, this hard, secret knot inside me. Then I met Isis. Through your interest in the occult, Eve prompted. Through my study of it as part of my therapy. He drank his tea now, and his lips were curved. I was angry and rude. Religion of any kind was an abomination to me, and I detested what she stood for. She was so beautiful, so full of light. I hated her for that. She challenged me to come to a ceremony, to observe much as you did last night. I preferred to think of myself as a scientist. I would go, I thought, to prove there was nothing in her faith but old words repeated by fools, just as there had been nothing in my father's creed but an excuse to hurt and dominate. I stood back, separate, cynical, and secretly enraged. I hated them for their simplicity and their devotion. Hadn't I seen that same captured look on the faces of those who'd gathered to hear my father speak? I wanted nothing to do with it, with them, but I was drawn back. 3 times I went back and watched, and though I didn't know it, I had begun to heal. And one night, on Alban Eilir, the spring equinox, Isis asked me into her home. When we were alone, she told me that she had recognized me. I panicked. I'd tried so hard to bury all of that, all of him. She said she hadn't meant from this life, though I could see in her eyes that she knew. She knew who I was, what I'd come from. She told me I had a great capacity for healing, and I would discover it once I had healed myself. Then she seduced me. He gave a short laugh, and in it was great warmth. Imagine my surprise when this beautiful woman led me to her bed. I went along like a puppy, half eager, half terrified. She was the first woman I'd had, and the only one I've been with. And on the night of the spring equinox, that hard, secret knot inside me began to dissolve. She loves me, and the miracle of that made me believe in other miracles. I became Wiccan. I embraced and was embraced by the craft. I learned to heal myself and others. The only person I've ever harmed in my life has been myself, but I understand better than Isis, with all her insights, the lure of violence, of selfishness, of bowing to another master. Eve believed him, yet too much of his past mirrored her own for her to trust her instincts. You've gone to a great deal of effort to hide your connection with your father. Didn't you? Did Alice know? Alice was innocence. She was youth. There were no David Baines Conroys in her life, until Selina Cross. And Cross is an intelligent and vindictive woman. If she'd discovered your secret, she might have used Alice and others to blackmail you. Would the members of your cult trust you if they knew your history? Since that's never been tested, I don't have the answer. I'd prefer, certainly, to keep my privacy. And on the night Alice was killed, you were here, alone with Isis. Yes, and we were here, alone, on the night Lobar was killed. You know I was on hand at the last murder, again with Isis, and yes, he smiled slightly, I have no doubt she would lie for me. But while she would live with the murderer's son, she would never live with the murderer. It's against everything she is. She loves you. Yes. And you love her. Yes. He blinked, and horror filled his eyes. You can't believe she'd have a part in any of this, beyond the fact that she loved Alice, cared for her as a mother would a sick child. She's incapable of hurting anyone. Mr. Forte, everyone is capable. You don't think he's involved, Peabody said as they started down the outside stairs. There's history of aberrant behavior in his family. He has an expert knowledge of chemicals, including hallucinogens and herbals. He has no alibi for any of the incidents. He was associated with Alice, closely enough that she may have stumbled across the secret he's been hiding for years, and that exposed could destroy his cult. She paused, tapping her fingers against the rail as she ticked off her mental list. He has good reason to hate Selina Cross and her membership, to want to punish them as he couldn't punish his father. He was on hand when Weinberg started to break, and could have easily circled around and killed him. That gives him motive and opportunity, and with his background, the potential for violent behavior. He's made himself a decent life after a nightmare childhood, Peabody protested. You can't condemn him for what his father did. Eve stared out at the street and fought her own demons. I'm not condemning him, Peabody. I'm investigating every possibility. Consider this. She turned. If Alice knew and told Frank, his reaction might very well have been to demand she break off the connection. It's likely, following this line of speculation, that he confronted Forte himself, even threatened him with exposure if he didn't break off his influence. He was in homicide when Conroy was taken in, and he'd have known and remembered every filthy detail. Yes, and Alice moved into her own place. She continued to work part-time for ISIS, but she no longer lived here. Why did she move out? Away from here when she was afraid? I don't know, Peabody admitted, and we can't ask her. Eve turned back, started down the stairs again, then swore when she saw the boy leaning on her vehicle. Well, hell. She strode down, straight over to Jamie. Get your butt off my hood. This is an official vehicle. An official piece of shit, he corrected with a quick, sassy grin. The city puts you cops into recycled garbage heaps. A high-profile detective like you ought to have better. I'll tell the chief you said so next time I'm in the tower. What are you doing here? Just hanging. His grin flashed again. And I ditched the shadow you put on me. He's good. Jamie tucked his thumbs in his pockets. I'm better. Why aren't you in school? Don't bother to call the Truant Brigade, Lieutenant. It's Saturday. How the hell was she supposed to keep track? Then why aren't you terrorizing one of the sky malls like a normal delinquent? His grin spread. I hate sky malls. They're so yesterday. Caught you on Channel 75. Did you drop by for my autograph? You scrawl it on a credit slip. I could outfit this heap of yours and make it rock. He looked past her, toward the shop. I got a load of the witch through the glass. She's doing some heavy retail today. Eve glanced back, noted the customers browsing inside. You've seen her before? Yeah, a couple times when I tailed Alice. Ever see anything interesting? Nope. Everybody's always wearing clothes in there. He wiggled his brows. A guy has to hope. I studied up on Wicca. They like to be naked a lot. Did see the head witch kick a guy out of the shop once. Really? It was Eve's turn to lean on the hood. Why? Couldn't say, but she was maximum pissed. I could see they were having words, and I thought she was going to belt him, especially when he shoved her. He shoved her. Yeah. I thought about going in then, though she was a hell of a lot bigger than he was. Still, guys got no business pushing women around. But whatever she said had him backing off. Backing way off until he was backing right out of the door, and he went off in a big hurry. What did he look like? Skinny dude, 5'10", maybe 125, couple years older than me. Long black hair, red tips, long face with his incisors fanged, red eyes, light complexion. Turned out in tight black leather, no shirt, couple of tattoos, but I was too far away to make him out. He shot her a smile, grim around the edges. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Last time I saw him, he wasn't looking so jazzy. Lobar, Eve thought, exchanging a glance with Peabody. The kid had given a solid and nearly professional description. And when was this? When did you see the incident? The day... His voice cracked a little, so he cleared his throat. The day before Alice died. And what did Isis do after Lobar? She made a call. Couple minutes later, the dude she lives with came on the run. They talked for a couple minutes, real intense. Then she put up the close sign, and they went into the back room. Ticked me off, he added. I could have followed the leather guy. You want to stop tailing people, Jamie. They make you. They tend to get annoyed. People I tail don't make me. I'm too good. You thought you were good at B&E, too, she reminded him dryly, and watched as his color rose. That was different. Look, the guy that was stabbed, he was right there, at Alice's viewing. It has to be connected, to her, to that Lobar creep, and I got a right to know. She straightened. Are you requesting the status of my investigation? Yeah, right. He rolled his eyes skyward. What's the status of your investigation? Ongoing, she said shortly, then jerked a thumb. Now scram. I got a right to know, he insisted. Survivors of victims and all that. You're the grandson of a cop, she reminded him. You know I'm not going to tell you anything. And you're a minor. I don't have to tell you anything. Now go play somewhere else, kid, before I have Peabody here roust you for loitering. The muscles of his jaw tightened and jumped. I'm not a kid. And if you don't deal with Alice's killer, I will. Eve snagged his arm by the jacket before he could storm away. Don't cross the line, she said very quietly. She kept her face close to his, forcing him to look directly into her eyes. You want justice, you'll get it. I'll by God get it for you. You want revenge? I'll slap you in a cage. You remember what Frank stood for and what your sister was, and then you think it all through again. Now get out of here. I loved them. He jerked his arm free, but not before she saw tears rush into his eyes. Fuck your justice! And fuck you! She let him walk because, though the language had been an adult's, the tears had been a child's. The kid's hurting, Peabody murmured. I know. So was she now. Tail him, will you, just to be sure he doesn't get in any trouble? Give it 30 minutes until he calms down, then beef your location. I'll pick you up. You going to talk to Isis? Yeah, let's see what she and Lobar had to say to each other. Oh, and Peabody, watch your step. Jamie's a clever kid. If he made one of Rourke's men, he's likely to make you. Peabody flashed a smile. I think I can manage to tail a kid for a few blocks. Trusting her aide to keep Jamie out of trouble, Eve walked into Spirit Quest. The air swam with incense and the scented melted wax from dozens of candles. The October sun was strong and gleamed in shooting colors through hanging prisms. The look Isis sent her held none of that exotic welcome. You've finished with Chaz, Lieutenant. For now, I'd like a few minutes. Isis turned to answer a question from a customer on a blend of herbs to enhance memory. Steep it for 5 minutes, Isis told her. Then strain it. You'll need to drink it daily for at least a week. If it doesn't help, let me know. She turned her head back to Eve. As you can see, this is a bad time. I'll be quick. I'm just curious about the visit you had from Lobar here, a few days before he ended up with his throat slashed. She'd kept her voice down, but left her intention clear. They would talk, in private or in public. The location was up to Isis. I don't think I misjudged you, Isis said quietly, but you make me doubt myself. She signaled to a young woman Eve recognized from the initiation rite. Jane will handle the customers, Isis said as she started toward the back room, but I don't want to leave her long. She's very new at shop work. Alice's replacement. Isis's eyes burned. No one could replace Alice. She entered what appeared to be a combination of office and storeroom. On the reinforced plastic shelves were gargoyles, candles, sealed bins of dried herbs, clear stoppered bottles filled with liquids of varying hues. On the small desk was a very modern and efficient computer and communication system. Jazzy equipment, Eve commented. Very now. We don't eschew technology, Lieutenant. We adapt and we use what is available to us. It's always been so. She gestured to a chair with a high carved back, took another for herself, one with armrests, shaped like wings. You said you would be quick, but first I need to know if you intend to leave Chaz in peace. My priority is closing a case, not the peace of mind of a suspect. How could you suspect him? Her hands curled around the armrests as she leaned forward. You, of all people, know what he's overcome. If his past is relevant, is yours? Isis demanded. Is the fact that you survived a nightmare to your credit or to your detriment? My past is my business, Eve said evenly, and you know nothing about it. What comes to me comes in flashes and impressions, stronger in some cases than others. I know you suffered and were innocent, just as Chaz is. I know you carry scars and harbor doubts, as he does. I know you struggle to make your own peace. And I see a room. Her voice changed, deepened, just as her eyes did. A small, cold room, washed with dirty red light, and a child, battered and bleeding, huddled in a corner. The pain is unspeakable, beyond endurance. And I see a man. He's covered with blood. His face is— Stop it! Eve's heart was hammering, choking off her air. For a moment she'd been back there, back in that child who'd crawled whimpering like an animal into the corner with blood staining her hands. Damn you! I'm sorry. Isis lifted a hand to press it to her own heart, and it trembled. I'm so very sorry. That's not my way. I let anger take over. She shut her eyes tight. I'm so very sorry. Chapter 17. Eve lurched out of the chair. There was no room to pace, to prowl, to steam off the dregs of memory. I'm aware, she began coldly, that you have what is commonly called heightened psychic skill. HPS is still being studied. I have a report on my desk right now. So you've got a talent, Isis. Congratulations. Now stay the hell out of my head. I will. Pity swam in her eyes and couldn't be blinked away. She'd seen much more than she'd expected or intended. I can only apologize again. Part of me wanted to hurt you. I didn't control it. It must be hard to control it when you're angry, when you're threatened, when you see a weakness and can exploit it. Isis took a careful breath. Her system was still rocked, not only by what she'd seen, but what she'd done. It isn't my way. It's against the foundation of my faith. I will cause no harm. She lifted her hands, rubbing her fingertips under her eyes to dry them. I'll answer your questions. You wanted to know about Lobar. You were seen arguing with him here in the store the day before Alice died. Was I? She drew her composure back, cloaked it over her. It's always a mistake to believe yourself alone. Yes, he was here. Yes, we had words. About? Alice, most specifically. He was a misguided young man, filled with a dangerous self-importance. He thought himself powerful. He was not. Alice wasn't here. She wasn't working that day? No. I'd hoped she'd spend time with her family, connect with them again through her grandfather's death. That was the primary reason I'd encouraged her to move out of here and into a place of her own. I'd asked her not to come in for a few days. Lobar expected her to be here. I don't believe he was sent, but came on his own, maybe to prove himself. And you argued? Yes. He said that I couldn't hide her, that she'd never get away. She'd broken the law that Cross and those who belonged to her subscribed to. He said her punishment would be torture and pain and death. He threatened her life, and you didn't tell me. I was here before, and I questioned you. No, I didn't tell you. I considered it no more than a clash of wills, his against mine. He was no more than a pawn. I didn't require HPS to intuit that. He only wanted to upset me, to prove his superiority. His way of doing so was to describe, graphically, what he had done to Alice sexually. She drew another breath. And he told me that I had been promised to him, that when I was taken in, when my power was crushed, he would be the first to lay hands on me. Then he told me what he intended to do and how much I would enjoy it. He invited me to sample some of his many talents then and there, so that I would see how much more of a man he was than Chaz. I laughed at him. Did he assault you? He pushed me. He was angry. I deliberately baited him into it. Then I used it. An old spell, she said with a flick of her hand. what you might call a mirror or boomerang spell, so that what he was sending toward me, all the darkness, the violence, the hate, was reflected back at him, and when reflected, enlarged. She smiled a little. He left quickly and very frightened. He didn't come back. And you were frightened? Yes, on a physical level I was. You called Forte. He's my mate. Isis lifted her chin. I have no secrets from him, and I depend on him. He'd have been angry. No. Eyes level, she shook her head. Concerned, yes. We cast a circle, performed a rite for protection and for purification. We were content. I should have seen, she continued, with regret shimmering in her voice. I should have seen that Alice was their goal. Pride made me believe they would turn on me, that they wouldn't dare touch her while she was under my protection. Maybe I wasn't as honest with you as I might have been, Dallas, because without my pride blinding me, I know Alice might still be alive. Guilt was there, Eve decided as she drove off to pick up Peabody, and guilt could lead to retribution. Frank and Alice had been killed by a different method than Lobar Einberg. The deaths were connected, she was certain, but the connection didn't mean they'd all been committed by the same hand. She wanted to get back to Central, run a probability scan. There was enough data for it now, and if the numbers warranted it, she could go to Whitney and request the manpower for a 24/7 watch on both groups of suspects. Damn the budget, she thought as she fought traffic. She'd need a high probability ratio to wangle the expense of time, money, and manpower. But Peabody and Feeney weren't enough to keep round-the-clock tabs on everyone involved. Including Jamie, she thought. The kid was looking for trouble. She believed he was smart enough to find it. Peabody hopped in when Eve swung to the curb at 7th and 47th. Across the sidewalk, the rowdy noise and computerized warfare of a VR den spilled out of the open doorway. It nicked the ordinance on noise pollution, but Eve figured the proprietors were willing to risk a fine or two in order to lure in tourists and the board. He in there? Yes, sir. Peabody looked hopefully at the rising steam from a Glidagrill. She could smell fresh soy burgers and oil fries. It was near enough to lunch to make her stomach yearn and her heart sink at the thought of facing the slop served at the eatery back at Central. Do you mind if I grab something from this cart? Eve shot an impatient look out the window. Aren't you supposed to starve of cold or something? I never could keep that straight. Anyway, Peabody took a long, deep breath through her nose. I feel great. That tea did the trick. Yeah, make it quick and eat it on the way. Do you want anything? Peabody asked over her shoulder as she pushed out of the car. No, snap it up and let's roll. Drugs, sex, Satan, and power, Eve mused. A religious war? Hadn't humans fought and died for beliefs since the dawn of time? Animals fought for territory. People fought for territory as well. And for gain. For passion. For beliefs. For the hell of it. They killed, she thought, very much for the same reasons. Got 2 of everything, Peabody announced, and set the thin cardboard filled with food on the seat between them. Just in case. If you don't want it, I can probably choke it down. It's the first time I've had an appetite in 2 days. She bit into the loaded burger while Eve waited for a break in traffic. The kid led me on quite a route. Walked off his mad for 10 blocks, caught an uptown tram, got off, headed west, and talk about appetite. He hit a cart on 6th and downed 2 real pig dogs and a mega scoop of fries. Hit another a block down for an orange freezy, which happens to be a personal favorite of mine. Before he went into the VR den, he tagged this guy for 3 candy bars. Growing boy, Eve commented, and shot out like a bullet when she saw a slim gap in traffic. Horns bellowed in protest. As long as he's eating junk and playing VR, he should stay out of trouble. Inside the whoops and whistles of the arcade, Jamie sneered at the holograms battling on his personal screen. He listened to the exchange in Eve's car, courtesy of his earpiece and the micro-recorder and location device he'd planted. Yeah, it had been worth the risk, he decided, diddling with the VR controls with his mind wandering. Of course it hadn't been that much of a challenge. Not only was the cop car a rolling heap of refuse, but its security system was rinky, at least when it came up against the skills of the master of electronics. Dallas wouldn't tell him what was going on, he thought grimly, and destroyed the hollow image of an urban tough. He'd just keep tabs on things his own way, and he'd deal with things his own way. Whoever had killed his sister had better prepare to die. Eve ran the probability program with mixed results. The computer agreed, by a 96th percentile, that the 4 cases were connected. The numbers dropped 10 points when it came to tagging different perpetrators. Charles Forte scored high on the index, as did Selina Cross. For Alban, she continued to run up against insufficient data. Frustrated, she buzzed Feeney. "I've got some data I want to download on you. For a probability scan, can you see what you can do with the numbers?" He wiggled his brows. "You want them higher or lower?" She laughed, shook her head. "I want them higher, but I want it solid. Could be I'm missing something." "Shoot it over. I'll take a look." "Appreciate it. And there's something else. I'm running into blanks every time I try to access data on this Alban character. The guy's in his 30s. There has to be more on him. I'm not getting education, medical, family, history. There's no criminal record, not even an illegal zone stop. My take is he had it wiped. Takes a lot of talent and a lot of money to wipe it clean. Something's always somewhere." She thought of Rourke and the suspiciously limited data on record. Well, he had a lot of talent, she reminded herself, and a lot of money. "I figured if anybody could find anything—" "Yeah, flatter me, kid," he winked. "I'll get back to you. Thanks, Feeney." "Was that Feeney?" Mavis bounced in, literally, on new air-pump, stack-heeled, neon yellow sneakers. "Shoot, you zipped off. I wanted to talk to him." Eve ran her tongue around her teeth. Mavis was decked out in classic Mavis style. Her hair matched her sneakers and made the eyes burn. She wore it in a spiral mass of curls that exploded up as much as down. Her slacks were glossy simulated rubber, dipped well below the glinting red stone in her navel, and hugged every curve. Her blouse, if it could be called that, was a snug band of material that matched the slacks and almost covered her breasts. Over it all, she wore a transparent duster. "Anybody try to arrest you on the way in?" "No, but I think the desk sergeant had an orgasm." Mavis fluttered emerald green lashes and dropped into a chair. "Great outfit, huh? Just off Leonardo's drawing board. So, are you ready?" "Ready? For what?" "We've got a salon date. Trina shuffled you in. I left the message on your unit. Twice." She narrowed her eyes at Eve. "Don't tell me you didn't get it, because I know you did. You logged it out." Logged it out, Eve remembered, and ignored it. "Mavis, I don't have time to play hair." "You haven't taken lunch today. I checked with the desk sarge," Mavis said smugly, "before his orgasm. You can eat while Trina whips you into shape." "I don't want to be whipped into shape." "It wouldn't be so bad if you hadn't hacked at it again yourself." Mavis rose, picked up Eve's jacket. "You might as well come quietly. I'm just going to keep hounding you. Log out for lunch. Take an hour. You'll be back and making our city safe by 1:30. Because it was easier than arguing, Eve snatched the jacket, shrugged it on. "Just the hair. I'm not having her put all the gunk on my face." "Dallas, relax." Mavis began to tug her out. "Enjoy being a girl." Eve snapped out her logbook to mark time, scanning Mavis's rubber-clad butt bouncing along. "I don't think that means the same thing to you as it does to me." Maybe it was the fumes, the potions and lotions, the oils and dyes and lacquers so typical in salons, but Eve found inspiration striking as she tipped back in her treatment chair. She wasn't sure how they'd gotten her to take off her clothes, submit to the indignity of the body smoother, the facial, the poking and prodding. She had managed to put her foot down, her bare, now toenail-painted foot down, when the discussion had veered toward temporary tattoos and body piercing. Otherwise, she was a hostage, coated with goop, her hair covered with the sperm-like cream Trina swore by. Privately, she could admit she was deeply terrified of Trina, with her snapping scissors and green glop. That's why she kept her eyes shut during the procedure, so as not to imagine herself emerging looking like a Trina clone with frizzed fuchsia hair and torpedo breasts. "Been too long," Trina lectured. "I told you, you need regular treatments. You got the basics, but you don't enhance, you lose the edge. If you came in regular, it wouldn't take so long to bring you back." She didn't want to be brought back, Eve thought. She wanted to be left alone. She suppressed a shudder as she felt something buzzing around her eyes. Brow shaping, she reminded herself, and struggled to calm. Trina was not tattooing a smiley face on her forehead. "I've got to get back. I've got work." "Don't rush me. Magic takes time." Magic, Eve thought, and rolled her eyes, causing Trina to hiss at her. Everybody was obsessed with magic, it seemed. She frowned, listening to Mavis chirp happily about a new body polish that gave the skin a gold glow. "This is mag, Trina. I've got to try it full body. Leonardo would lap it up." "You can get it temp and edible. 6 flavors on the market now. Apricot's real popular." Potions and lotions, Eve thought. Smoke and mirrors. Rites and rituals. She opened her eyes to slits. She saw Mavis and Trina huddled over a vial of gold liquid. Mavis with her neon hair, she thought with odd affection. Trina with her pink frizz. Weird sisters. Weird sisters, she thought again, and sat up. Trina let out another hiss. "Back down, Dallas. You got 2 minutes left." "Mavis, you said you used to run a psychic con." "Sure." Mavis fluttered her newly painted neon nails. "Madame Electra sees all, knows all. Or Ariel, the sad-eyed sprite." She dipped her head, managed to look delicate and forlorn. "I guess I had about 6 grifts on that theme." "And you could spot somebody pulling the same grift." "Shit, are you kidding? From 3 blocks with sunshades on." "You were good," Eve considered. "I never saw you in that gig, but you were good in the others." "You busted me." "I'm better." Eve flashed a smile and felt the glop on her face ooze. "Listen, there's this place you could check out for me," she began, as Trina marched over and shoved her back into the horizontal. "Both of you," she added, eyeing Trina. "Hey, is this a cop deal?" "Maybe." "Frigid," Trina said, and pushed Eve back toward the rinsing bowl. "You could scope it out." Eve squeezed her eyes shut as water flooded. "See if you can get the clerk, her name's Jane, to talk. Give me a rundown. They don't come clean with cops." "Who does?" Trina wanted to know. "I want impressions," Eve continued. "You're interested in herbs, in mind expansion, love potions, sex enhancers, soothers." "Illegals?" It didn't take Mavis long to catch on. "You think they might be dealing?" "It's a possibility I need to confirm or eliminate. You could spot it every bit as quick as an undercover. And you could spot a grift. If they're hosing customers, if they're playing any cons, the money's coming from somewhere." "This could rock, Mavis," Trina grinned. "You and me, a couple of detectives, like Sherlock and Dr. Jekyll." "Decent. I thought it was Dr. Holmes, though." Eve closed her eyes again. Must be the fumes, she decided. When she arrived home, Mavis and Trina were there, entertaining Rourke with their exploits. Eve scooped up the cat and followed the laughter. "I bought this lotion to rub on," Trina was saying. "It's supposed to bring out the animal in men, like pheromones." She stuck her long arm under Rourke's nose. "What's it do for you?" "If I wasn't married to a woman who carries a weapon, I'd—" He trailed off, grinned. "Hello, darlin'." "You could finish the thought," Eve told him, and dumped Galahad in his lap. "I'll wait until you're unarmed." "Dallas, it was so decent." Mavis popped up, waving her glass of wine so that the straw-colored liquid sloshed to the rim. "I can't wait to get home and tell Leonardo. But Trina and we wanted to grab some nutrition, and come right over and report. You should see all the stuff I bought." She started to dive into one of several shopping bags with the Spirit Quest logo. Eve resisted groaning and tugged Mavis's arm. "Talk now, show later." "I must have lost my mind, sending the two of you in there. I tell you," she said, whirling to Rourke, "it's the fumes in those places. That's what makes people sit there and let themselves be shaved and painted and pierced." His eyes clouded briefly. "Pierced? Where exactly?"
"Oh, she wouldn't go for the nipple job."
Trina waved a hand.
"Said she'd zap me if I came near her with the jabber."
"Good girl," Rourke murmured. "I'm proud of your restraint." Because her head was starting to ache, Eve poured herself a glass of wine. "Did the two of you do anything in there but spend your credits?"
"We had readings," Mavis told her. "Genuinely iced. I've got an adventurous soul, and my narcissism is balanced by a generous heart."
Eve couldn't help it. She laughed. "You don't have to be psychic to read that one, Mavis. You just have to have eyes. You did go in dressed like that, right?" Mavis dangled her neon sneaker.
"Sure. Jane, the clerk, was real helpful, seemed to know her herbs. We judged her sincere, right, Trina?" "Jane was sincere," Trina agreed soberly. "Kinda dull. I could fix her up with a couple sessions. A little highlighter, some body work. Now the goddess. Hard to improve on that one."
"Isis?" Eve sat up. "She was there?"
"She came out of the back while we were doing the herb thing," Mavis put in. "I was saying how I wanted something to improve my performance level, boost my stage energy. See, when you're working a grift, you hang better if you believe the con. So, if you can do true, it's mag." "I was looking for sex stuff." Trina smiled sinuously. "Stuff to attract men, lift sexual performance. And I said how I had this stressful job, kept me tense and edgy. Over-the-counters just weren't cutting it for me. So I thought they might have something more potent, and I didn't mind the cost."
"They had lots of blends." Mavis took up the story.
"I didn't see anything off. Fact is, she said how drugs weren't the answer. What we wanted was the natural way, like holistic." "Holistic," Trina agreed. "We nudged her, flashed credits and stuff, but she wasn't buying. Or I guess that would be selling."
"The Amazon Queen went into the back." Mavis picked up the story. "Came back with this mix." Hair flying, Mavis dug into her shopping bag, tossed the smaller clear bag to Eve. "Said I should sample it, and wouldn't charge me. She wants me to let her know if it worked for me. You can test it out, but I'd say it's clean." "Who gave you the reading?"
"Isis. She didn't look too keen when she came in."
Mavis tipped back her glass.
"We were playing it up, I went with the wide-eyed giggle act, oohed and awed a lot over the stock."
Eve shifted her gaze to the shopping bags. "I see you carried the act through."
"I liked the stuff."
Mavis grinned, unrepentant.
"Then AQ, Amazon Queen, she started to get into it. I had my sights on this A1 crystal ball, a green one. What did she call it, Trina?" "something."
"Tourmaline," Rourke provided.
"Yeah, right, tourmaline. She steered me away. Said it was for relaxing, for soothing, and if I wanted energy, I should go for the orange one for, vitality."
"More expensive?" Eve assumed.
"No, cheaper, way cheaper. She said how the green one wasn't for me. She thought I had a friend who could use it, someone close to me who carried too much stress, but she should choose it for herself when she was ready."
Eve grunted, frowned.
"Then she gave us a reading. Mega. She said how she was glad we'd come in. She'd needed the positive energy. She wouldn't charge us for the readings. I liked her, Dallas. She hasn't got the eyes of a grifter."
"Okay, thanks. I'll check out the package." One way to make money, Eve mused, was to round up repeat customers, and a sure way to ensure repeaters was to addict them.
"We gotta make it."
Mavis was up again, gathering her bags.
"I bought this candle for romance. I want to see if it works. See you Tuesday night."
Tuesday? Mavis tapped her platform sneaker.
Our Halloween party, Dallas, you said you'd come.
I must have been drunk.
No, you weren't. 9 o'clock, our place. Everybody's coming. I even tagged Feeney. See you.
Loosen up, Trina advised as she strolled out. Wear a costume. Not in this lifetime, Eve muttered. Well, she bounced the small bag of leaves and seeds in her hand. That was probably a monumental waste of time. They enjoyed themselves, and you'll feel better once you analyze that mix. I suppose. I'm not getting anywhere. Eve set the bag on the table. I keep taking wrong turns. I can feel it. Enough wrong turns, and you usually end up in the right place after all. He leaned forward, set his hands on her shoulders, and began to rub. Mavis has a close friend who carries around too much stress. He worked on the knots. I wonder who that could be. Shut up. He chuckled, kissed the nape of her neck. You smell wonderful. It's that goop Trina poured all over me. She mentioned it. She said I'd enjoy it. He sniffed her neck again, made her chuckle. And I am. She also said she managed to hold you down for a full body treatment. I'm to pay particular attention to your butt. She certainly did. She tried to talk me into a temp tattoo of a rosebud on my right cheek. She started to sigh, then bolted up, grabbing her ass. Jesus Christ, she had me on the table for 10 minutes. You don't think she snuck one on? Rourke lifted a brow, then smiled slowly as he rose. I'll have to make it my job to find out. Chapter 18. She had a rosebud on her ass, and wasn't happy about it. Standing naked in the bathroom, Eve adjusted the trifold mirror until she could get a good look. I think I could bust her for this, she muttered. Decorating a cop's posterior without a license? Rourke suggested as he strolled in. Felonious reproduction of floral imagery. You're getting a big charge out of this, aren't you? Miffed, Eve snagged a robe off the hook. Darling Eve, I thought I made it perfectly clear last night I was on your side of the issue. Didn't I do my best to chew it off? She would not laugh, she ordered herself as she bit down hard on her tongue. There was nothing funny about it. I've got to get some solution or something. Whatever they make to get it off. What's your hurry? It's rather sweet. What if I have to go in for a disinfect? Or need to shower or change at the station? Do you know what kind of grief a butt tattoo's going to get me? He slid his arms around her, clever enough to get them under rather than over the robe. You're not working today. I'm going in. I've got to check my unit, see if Feeney shot back some data. And it won't make any difference if you do it Monday morning. We've got the day off. To do what? He merely smiled, slid his hands lower to stroke her rosebud. Didn't we just do that? It bears repeating, he mused, but it could wait a bit. Why don't we spend the day lazing around the pool? Lazing around the pool? It had a certain appeal. Well, maybe, in Martinique. Don't bother to pack, he told her, planting a quick kiss on her mouth. You won't need anything but what you're wearing. She spent the day in Martinique, wearing nothing but a smile and a rosebud. That might have been why she was dragging a bit more than usual on Monday morning. You look tired, Lieutenant. Peabody dug a bag out from her field kit, set 2 fresh cream donuts on the desk. She was still beaming over the fact that she'd gotten them through the bullpen without the hounds sniffing them out. And sort of tanned. She peered closer. You get a flash? No, just got some sun yesterday, that's all. It rained all day. Not where I was, Eve muttered, and filled her mouth with pastry. I've got a probability ratio to run by the commander. Feeney worked some numbers. We're still pretty light, but I'm going to shoot for round-the-clocks on the top suspects. I don't suppose you want my probability ratio on your chances of getting it. New interoffice came down this morning about excess overtime. Fuck it. It's not excess if it's necessary. Whitney could play it to the chief, and the chief could play it to the mayor. We've got 2 high-profile homicides, generating a lot of media. We need the manpower to close them and turn off the heat. Peabody risked a smile. You rehearsing your pitch? Maybe. She blew out a breath. If the numbers were a few points higher, I wouldn't have to pitch so hard. There are too many people involved. That's the problem. Lifting her hands, she pressed her fingers to her eyes. We've got to run the name of every member of both cults. Over 200 people. Say we eliminate half on data and profile, then we've still got 100 to tag, check alibis. Days of work, Peabody agreed. The commander would probably spring for a couple of uniforms to knock on doors, sweep out the obvious non-involved. I'm not sure there are any obvious non-involved. Eve pushed away from her desk. It took more than one person to transport Lobar's body, strap him onto that form. And it took a vehicle. None of the primes owns a vehicle large enough to have carried and concealed the body and the pentagram. Maybe one of the membership does. We run names through vehicle licensing. Failing that, we start checking on rentals, vehicles reported stolen on the night of the murder. She pushed at her hair. And it's just as likely whoever dumped him jumped a vehicle from one of the long-term lots and nobody ever noticed. Do we check anyway? Yeah, we check anyway. Maybe Feeney can spare somebody in EDD to do some of the grunt work. Meanwhile, you get started, and I'll go begging to the commander. She punched her link when it beeped. Dallas, homicide. I need to talk to you. Lewis? Eve cocked a brow. You want to talk about the charges against your client regarding resisting? You talk to the PA. I need to talk to you, he repeated. And she watched as he lifted his hand to his mouth and began to gnaw away his perfect manicure. Alone, privately, as soon as possible. She lowered a hand, signaling Peabody to keep back and out of view. What about? I can't talk about it on the link. I'm on my pocket unit, but even that's risky. I need you to meet me. Come here. No, they may be following me. I don't know. I can't be sure. I'm being careful. Had he made the shadow Feeney'd put on him, Eve wondered, or was he just being paranoid? Who might be following you? You've got to meet me, he insisted, at my club, the Luxury on Park, level 5. I'll leave your name at the desk. Give me some incentive, Lewis. I've got a full plate here. I think I saw a murder. Just you, Eve. I won't talk to anyone else. Make sure you're not followed. Hurry. Eve pursed her lips at the blank screen. Well, that's incentive. I think we've caught a break, Peabody. See if you can sweet-talk Feeney into giving you an extra pair of hands from EDD. You're not going to meet him alone, Peabody protested as Eve grabbed her bag. I can handle one scared lawyer. Eve bent down, checked the clinch piece strapped to her ankle. We've got a man outside the club in any case, and I'm leaving my communicator on. Monitor. Yes, sir. Watch your back. The 5th floor of the Luxury Club held 20 private suites for the members' use. Meetings of a professional or private nature could be held there. Each suite was individually decorated to depict its own era, and each contained a complete communication and entertainment center. Parties could be held there, of the large or the intimate nature. The catering department was unsurpassed in a city often preoccupied with food and drink. Licensed companions were available through the concierge for a small additional service charge. Lewis always booked Suite 5C. He enjoyed the opulence of the 18th century French style, with its emphasis on the decorative. The rich fabrics of the upholstery on curved-back chairs and velvet settees appealed to his love of texture. He enjoyed the thick, dark draperies, the gold tassels, the gleam of gilt on pier glass mirrors. He had entertained his wife, as well as an assortment of lovers, in the wide, high canopy bed. He considered this period to have embodied hedonism, self-indulgence, and a devotion to earthly pleasures. Royalty had ruled and had done as it pleased, and hadn't art flourished? If peasants had starved outside the privileged walls, that was simply a societal mirror of nature's natural selection. The chosen few had lived life to the hilt. And here, in Midtown Manhattan, 300 years later, he could enjoy the fruits of their indulgence. But he wasn't enjoying them now. He paced, drinking unblended scotch in quick, jerky gulps. Terror was a dew on his brow that refused to be wiped away. His stomach roiled, his heart rabbited in his chest. He'd seen murder. He was nearly sure of it. It was all so hazy, all so surreal, like a virtual reality program with elements missing. The secret room, the smoke, voices, his own among them, lifted in chant. The taste, lingering on the tongue, of warm, tainted wine. Those were all so familiar, a part of his life now for 3 years. He joined the cult because he believed in its basic principles of pleasure, and he'd enjoyed the rituals, the robes, the masks, the words repeated and repeated while candles guttered into pools of black wax. And the sex had been incredible. But something was happening. He found himself obsessing about meetings, desperately craving that first deep gulp of ceremonial wine. And then there were the blackouts, holes in his memory. He'd been logy and slow to focus the morning after a rite. Recently, he'd found blood dried under his nails and couldn't remember how it had gotten there. But he was starting to. The crime scene photos Eve had shown him had clicked something open in his mind, and had filled that opening with shock and horror. Images swirled behind his eyes, smoke swirling, voices chanting, flesh gleaming from sex, the moans and grunts of vicious mating, dank black hair swaying, bony hips pumping. Then the spray of blood, the gush of it spurting out like that final cry of sexual release. Selina, with her feral, feline smile, the knife dripping in her hand. Lobar, God, it had been Lobar, sliding from the altar, his throat gaping wide like a screaming mouth. Murder. Nervously, he twitched the heavy drapes open a fraction, let his frightened eyes search the street below. He'd seen a blood sacrifice, and not of a goat, of a man. Had he dipped his fingers into that open throat? Had he slipped them between his lips to taste the fresh blood? Had he done something so abhorrent? My God, dear God, had there been others? Other nights, other sacrifices? Could he have witnessed and blanked it from his mind? He was a civilized man, Lewis told himself as he jerked the draperies back into place. He was a husband and a father. He was a respected attorney. He wasn't an accessory to murder. He couldn't be. With his breath coming fast and short, he poured more scotch, stared at himself in one of the ornately framed mirrors. He saw a man who hadn't slept, hadn't eaten, hadn't seen his family in days. He was afraid to sleep. The images might come more clearly in sleep. He was afraid to eat, sure the food would clog in his throat and kill him. And he was mortally afraid for his family. Weinberg had been at the ceremony. Weinberg had stood beside him and had seen what he had seen. And Weinberg was dead. Weinberg had no wife, no children, but Lewis did. And if he was in danger and went home, would they come for him there? He had begun to understand during those long, sleepless nights, when liquor was his only company, that he was ashamed at the thought of his children discovering what he had participated in. He had to protect them, and himself. He was safe here, he assured himself. No one could get inside the suite unless he opened the door. Possibly he was overreacting. He mopped his sweating forehead with an already sodden handkerchief. Stress, overwork, too many late nights. Perhaps he was having a small breakdown. He should see a doctor. He would. He would see a doctor. He would take his family and go away for a few weeks. A vacation, a time to relax, to reevaluate. He would break off from the cult. Obviously it wasn't good for him. God knew it was costing him a small fortune in the bi-monthly contributions. He'd gotten in too deeply somehow, forgotten he'd entered into the cult out of curiosity and a thirst for selfish sex. He'd swallowed too deeply of wine and smoke, and it was making him imagine things. But he'd had blood under his nails. Lewis covered his face, tried to catch his breath. It didn't matter, he thought. None of it mattered. He shouldn't have called Eve. He shouldn't have panicked. She would think him mad, or worse, an accessory. Selina was his client. He owed his client his loyalty as well as his professional skill. But he could see her, a knife gripped in her hand as she sliced it across exposed flesh. Lewis stumbled across the suite, into the master bath, and collapsing, vomited up scotch and terror. When the cramps passed, he pulled himself up. He leaned over the sink, croaked out a request for water at 40 degrees. It poured out of the curved gold faucet, splashed into the blindingly white sink, and cooled his fevered skin. He wept a moment, shoulders trembling, sobs echoing off the shining tiles. Then he lifted his head, forced himself to look in the mirror once more. He had seen what he had seen. It was time to face it. He would tell Eve everything and shift his burden into her hands. He felt a moment of relief, sweet in its intensity. He wanted to call his wife, hear his children's voices, see their faces. A movement reflected in the glass had him whirling, had his heart bounding into his throat. "How did you get in here?" "Housekeeping, sir." The dark woman in the trim black and white maid's uniform held a stack of towels. She smiled. "I don't want housekeeping." He passed a shaking hand over his face. "I'm expecting someone shortly. Just leave the towels and—" His hand slid slowly to his side. "I know you. I know you." Through the smoke, he thought, through the cracked ice of fresh terror. One of the faces in the smoke. "Of course you do, Lewis." Her smile never wavered as she dropped the towels and revealed the athame she held. "We fucked just last week." He had time to draw breath for a scream before she plunged the knife into his throat. Eve strode out of the elevator, bristling with annoyance. The reception droid had kept her waiting 5 full minutes while he checked her ID. He'd given her a hassle over taking her weapon into the club. She'd been considering just using it on him to shut him up when the day manager had bustled out full of apologies. The fact that they'd both been aware he'd been apologizing to Rourke's wife rather than Eve Dallas had only irritated her. She'd deal with him later, she promised herself. See how the luxury club would like a full-scale inspection by the Department of Health. Maybe a visit from Vice to check out their LCs. She had strings she could pull to ensure the management a couple of days of minor hell. She turned toward 5C, started to punch the buzzer under the peep screen. Her gaze flickered over the security light. It beeped green for disengaged. She drew her weapon. "Peabody?" "Here, sir." Though her voice was muffled against Eve's shirt pocket. "The door's unlocked here. I'm going in." "Do you want backup, Lieutenant?" "Not yet. Stay on me." She slipped inside, soundlessly, shut the door at her back. She kept to her defensive crouch, sweeping her weapon and her gaze through the room. Fancy furniture, ugly and overdone in her mind, a rumpled suit jacket, a half-empty bottle, drapes drawn, quiet. She stepped farther into the room, but kept near the wall, guarding her own back as she circled. No one hid behind the furniture, behind the drapes. The small kitchen was empty and apparently unused. She stepped to the doorway of the bedroom, again crouched, again sweeping her weapon. The bed was made, heaped with decorative pillows, and apparently hadn't been slept in. Her gaze moved to the closet, the firmly shut carved doors. She sidestepped toward it, then heard the sounds from the bathroom. Quick, heavy breathing, grunts of effort, a distinctly female chuckle. It passed through her mind that Lewis might be having a quick roll with the LC of his choice, and she gritted her teeth in annoyance. But she didn't relax her guard. She stepped left, shifted her weight, and swung to the doorway. The smell hit her an instant before she saw it. Jesus Christ! "Lieutenant?" Peabody's voice, ringing with concern, piped out of her pocket. "Back off!" Eve leveled her weapon at the woman. "Drop the knife and back off." "Sending backup now. Give me your situation, Lieutenant." "I've got a homicide. Really fresh. I said, back the hell off! The woman only smiled. She straddled Louis, or what was left of him. Blood pooled on the floor, splattered the white tiles, coated her hands and face. The stench of it and the gore was thick as smoke. Louis, Eve noted, was well beyond hope. He'd been gutted and disemboweled, and he was busily being eviscerated. "He's already dead," the woman said pleasantly. "I can see that. Put down the knife." Eve took a step closer, gesturing with the weapon. "Put it down and move away from him. Slow. Face down on the floor, hands behind your back." It had to be done. She slid her leg over the body until she was kneeling beside it, like a mourner over a grave. "Don't you recognize me?" Yeah. Even through the mask of blood, Eve had made the face, and she'd remembered the voice, the sweetness of it. Miriam, right? First-degree witch. Now drop the fucking knife and kiss the floor, hands behind you. All right. Obligingly, Miriam set the knife aside, barely glancing at it when Eve trapped it under a heel, sent it skidding across the room well out of reach. "He told me to be quick. In and out. I lost track of time." Eve tugged her restraints from her rear pocket, snapped them in place over Miriam's wrists. "He?" "Chaz. He said I could do this one all by myself, but to be fast." She let out a sigh. "I guess I wasn't fast enough." With her mouth thin, Eve looked down at Louis Trevane. No, she thought, I wasn't fast enough. "You copy that, Peabody?" "Yes, sir." "Pick up Charles Forte for questioning. Do it personally, and take 2 uniforms for backup. Don't approach him alone." "Affirmative. Do you have the situation under control there, Lieutenant?" Eve stepped back from the blood running in a rivulet toward her boots. "Yeah," she said. "I've got it." She showered and changed before the interviews. The 10 minutes it took was necessary. She'd all but bathed in Louis Trevane's blood before she'd released his body to the M.E. If anyone in the lockers noticed the elegant little flower on her ass, there was no comment. The buzz on the state of this particular crime scene had already swarmed through the station. "I'm taking Miriam first," Eve told Feeney as she studied the dainty woman through the one-way glass. "You could take a break, Dallas. Word is it was pretty rough over there this morning." "You always think you've seen it all," she murmured. "But you never do. There's always something else." She blew out a breath. "I want to do it now. I want to close this." "Okay. Duet or solo?" "Solo. She's going to talk." "She's on something." Eve shook her head. "Maybe she's just plain crazy, but I think she's using. I'm going to get her to sign for a chemi-scan. The PA doesn't like confessions given under the influence." "I'll order one up." "Thanks." She moved past him, walked into the room. Miriam's face had been washed clean of blood. She wore a baggy disposable shift in police station beige, and still managed to look like a young, eager fairy. Eve set the recorder, entered standard, then sat. "You know I've got you tagged, Miriam, so we don't have to take that dance. You murdered Louis Trevane." "Yes." "What are you on?" "On?" "Doesn't look like straight Zeus. You're too mellow. Will you agree to a drug scan?" "I don't want to." Her pretty mouth pouted. Her dark eyes sulked. "Maybe later I'll change my mind." She pursed her lips and plucked at the thin skirt of the shift. "Can I get some of my own clothes? This thing's itchy, and it offends the eye." "Yeah, we're real worried about that right now. Why did you kill Louis Trevane?" "He was evil. Chaz said so." "By Chaz, you're referring to Charles Forte." "Yes, but no one calls him Charles. It's just Chaz." "And Chaz told you Louis was evil. Did he ask you to kill Louis?" "He said I could. Other times I just got to watch, but this time I got to do it myself." There was a lot of blood. She lifted a hand, studied it carefully. "Gone now." "What other times, Miriam?" "Oh, other times." She moved her shoulders. "Blood purifies." Did you assist or witness other murders?
Sure. Death is a transition.
I got to do this one.
It was a very powerful act. I cut the demon out of him. Demons exist, and we fight them.
By killing the people they inhabit.
Yes.
He said you were smart. Miriam beamed at her out of slanted black eyes.
But you'll never touch him. He's too far removed from your law.
Let's go back to Lewis. Tell me about it.
Well, I have a friend on staff at the luxury. All I had to do was screw him, and that was okay. I like to screw. Then I slipped one of the master codes in my pocket. You could get in most anywhere with a master. I put on one of the maid's dresses so no one would bother me, and I went right in Lewis's suite. I took him towels. He was in the bathroom. He'd been sick. I could smell it. Then I stabbed him. I went for the throat, just like I was supposed to. Then I guess I got into it.
She moved her shoulders again, sent Eve a mischievous smile.
It's kind of like punching a knife through a pillow, you know, and it makes this sucky noise. Then I cut the demon out of him, and you came. I guess I'd finished anyway.
Yeah, I guess you had. How long have you known Chaz?
Oh, a couple of years. We like to make it in the park in the daytime, because you never know if somebody's going to come along and see.
How does Isis feel about that?
Oh, she doesn't know.
Miriam rolled her eyes.
She wouldn't like it.
How does she feel about the murders? Miriam's brows knit, and her eyes unfocused for a moment.
The murders? She doesn't know. Does she?
No, we wouldn't tell her about that. So it's just between you and Chaz.
Between me and Chaz.
Her eyes fluttered, stayed blank.
I guess. Sure.
Have you told anyone else in the coven?
The coven?
She laid her fingers on her lips, tapped them.
No, it's our secret. Our little secret.
What about Weinberg?
Who?
In the parking garage. The banker. Do you remember?
I didn't get to do that.
She bit her bottom lip now, shook her head.
No, he did that. He was supposed to bring me the heart, but he didn't. He said there wasn't time.
And Lobar?
Lobar.
Her fingers kept tapping.
No, that was different. Wasn't it? I can't remember. I'm getting a headache.
Her voice turned petulant.
I don't want to talk any more now. I'm tired.
She laid her hands down on her folded arms and closed her eyes. Eve watched her for a moment. There wasn't any point in pushing now, she decided. She had enough. Eve signaled a uniform. Miriam murmured sulkily as Eve slipped the restraints back into place. Take her down to psych. Get Mira to do the evaluation, if possible. Make a note to request permission for a drug scan. Yes, sir. Eve stepped to the door behind them, pushed a call button. Have Forte brought to interview room C. It occurred to her that she would like to lay her head on pillowed arms herself. Instead, she turned down the corridor into the observation area. Peabody stood beside Feeney. I want you in on this, Peabody. What did you think of her, Feeney? She's whacked. He held out his bag of nuts. Whether it's psych or induced, I don't know. Looks like a mix of both to me. That was my take. How come she seemed so damn normal the other night? Then she pulled her hands through her hair and laughed. I can't believe I'm saying that. She was standing naked in the woods, letting Forte kiss her crotch. She lowered her hands, pressed them to her eyes, then dropped them. His father never used a partner. That was never hinted at. He worked alone. So he's got a different style, Feeney said. Whacked or not, the girl pinned Forte. It doesn't feel right to me, Peabody murmured, and Eve turned to her with a mildly interested glance. What doesn't feel right, officer? Detecting the light trace of sarcasm, Peabody lifted her jaw. Wiccans don't kill. People kill, Eve reminded her, and not everybody takes their religion seriously. Had any red meat lately? The flush worked up from under Peabody's starched uniform collar. Free-agers were strict vegan and used no animal byproducts. That's different. I walked in on a murder, Eve said shortly. The woman with the knife in her hand identified Charles Forte as her accomplice. That's fact. I don't want you to take anything but fact into the interview room. Understood? Yes, sir. Peabody stiffened her shoulders. Perfectly. But she stood in place a moment longer when Eve strode off. She's had a rough morning, Feeney said sympathetically. I got a quick scan of the first crime scene shots. It doesn't get any rougher. I know. But she shook her head, watching as Charles Forte was led into the room behind the glass. But it just doesn't feel right. She turned away, headed around the corner, and stepped into the interview room just as Eve was reading Forte his rights. I don't understand. You don't understand your rights and obligations? No, I understand them. I don't understand why I'm here. There was puzzlement and a vague sense of disappointment as he turned his gaze toward Peabody. If you'd wanted to speak to me again, you had only to ask. I would have met you or come in voluntarily. It wasn't necessary to send 3 uniformed officers to my home. I thought it was necessary, Eve said shortly. Do you want counsel or representation at this time, Mr. Forte? No. He shifted in agitation, tried to ignore the fact that he was inside a police facility, like his father. Just tell me what you want to know. I'll try to help you. Tell me about Louis Trevane. I'm sorry. He shook his head. I don't know anyone by that name. Do you usually send your handmaids out to murder strangers? What? His face went white as he pushed himself to his feet. What are you talking about? Sit down. Eve snapped the order out. Louis Trevane was murdered 2 hours ago by Miriam Hopkins. Miriam? That's ridiculous. That's impossible. It's very possible. I walked in while she was cutting out his liver. Chaz swayed, then sank onto his chair. There's a mistake. It couldn't be. I think the mistake was yours. Eve rose, wandered over, then leaned over his shoulder. You should pick your weapons more carefully. When you use defective ones, they can turn on you. I don't know what you mean. May I have some water? I don't understand this. Eve jerked a thumb to Peabody, signaling her to pour a glass. Miriam told me everything, Chaz. She told me that you were lovers, that you neglected to bring her Weinberg's heart as promised, and that you'd allowed her to execute Trevane herself. Blood purifies. No. He lifted the glass in both hands and still slopped water over the edge as he tried to drink. No. Your father liked to slice people up. Did he show you how it was done? How many other defective tools have you used? Did you dispose of them after you'd finished with them? Keep any souvenirs? She continued to hammer at him while he sat, just sat, shaking his head slowly from side to side. Was this your version of a religious war, Chaz? Eliminate the enemy? Cut out the demons? Your father was a self-styled Satanist, and he'd made your life a misery. You couldn't kill him. You can't get to him now, but there are others. Are they substitutes? When you kill them, are you killing him, hacking him to pieces because of what he did to you? He squeezed his eyes tight, began to rock. God, my God, oh God, you can help yourself here. Tell me why. Tell me how. Explain it to me, Chaz. I may be able to cut you a break. Tell me about Alice. About Lobar. No. When he lifted his head, his eyes were streaming. I'm not my father. Eve didn't flinch, didn't look away from the desperate plea in his eyes. Aren't you? Then she stepped back and let him sob. Chapter 19. She worked him for an hour, relentlessly pushing, then backtracking, then shifting directions. She kept the death photos on the table, dealt out like grisly playing cards. How many more, she demanded. How many more images of the dead should there be? Through it all, he wept and denied, wept and was silent. When she turned him over to Holding, his eyes stayed on hers until he was led around the corner and away. But it was the look in Peabody's eyes that caught her and had her waiting until they were alone. Problem, officer? Observing the interrogation had been like watching a wolf toy and tear at a wounded deer. Peabody drew a breath, braced. Yes, sir. I didn't like your interview technique. Didn't you? It seemed overly harsh, cruel, using his father over and over again, directing him to look at the stills. Eve's stomach was raw, her nerves scraped clean, but her voice was cool, her hands steady as she gathered up the stills. Maybe I should have asked him politely to please confess so we could all go home and get back to our comfy lives. Don't know why I didn't think of it. I'll make a note to try it the next time I have a murder suspect in interview. Peabody wanted to wince, managed not to. It just seemed to me, Lieutenant, particularly since the suspect had no representation. Did I read him his rights, officer? Yes, sir, but did he verify that he understood those rights? Peabody pulled back, nodded slowly. Yes, sir. Can you estimate, Officer Peabody, how many interviews you've conducted on homicide cases? Sir, I can't, Eve snapped, and her eyes went from cool to hot. I can't, because there's been too fucking many of them. You want to take a look at the stills again? You want to see this guy with his guts spilled out all over the tiles? Maybe it'll toughen you up a little, because if my interview techniques upset you, Peabody, you're in the wrong career. Eve strode to the door, then whirled back while Peabody stood where she was at rigid attention. And I expect my aide to back me up, not question me because she happens to have a soft spot for witches. If you can't handle that, Officer Peabody, I'll approve your request for transfer. Understood? Yes, sir. Peabody let out a shaky breath as Eve's boots clicked down the corridor. Understood, she said to herself, and shut her eyes. A little rough on her, Feeney commented when he caught up. Don't you start on me. He only held up a hand. Isis came in voluntarily. I put her in room B. With a jerk of the head, Eve changed directions and pulled open the door of room B. Isis stopped her restless pacing and spun around. How could you do this to him? How could you bring him here? He's terrified of places like this. Charles Forte is being held for questioning in the stabbing death of Louis Trevane, among others. In contrast to Isis's raised and furious voice, Eve's was flat and cold. He has not yet been charged. Charged? Her golden skin paled. You can't believe Chaz had anything to do with the murder. Trevane? We don't know any Louis Trevane. And you know everyone Forte knows, Isis? Eve set the file on the table, kept her hand on it as if to remind herself what was inside. You know everything he does and thinks and plans. We are as close as it's possible for human bodies and minds and souls to be. There is no harm in him. The temper drained out of her. Now her voice trembled. Let me take him home, please. Eve met the pleading eyes straight on, forced herself not to feel. Did you know, being as close as it's possible, that he'd decided to get equally close, bodily speaking, with Miriam? Miriam? Isis blinked once, then nearly laughed. That's ridiculous. She told me herself. She smiled when she told me. Remembering that, bringing that image back, dried up any sympathy. She smiled as she straddled what was left of Louis Trevane, while his blood was smeared all over her hands and her face and the knife she held. As her legs went weak, Isis reached out blindly to brace a hand on the back of a chair. Miriam killed someone? That's impossible. I thought all things were possible in your sphere. I walked in on her little ceremony myself. Eve's finger curled on the file, but she didn't open it. There was still pity, after all, for the woman who loved and believed. She was very cooperative, happily told me that Forte had allowed her to kill Trevane herself, unlike the others, where she only observed. Using her hand to keep her balance, Isis stepped unsteadily around the chair, eased herself into it. She's lying. There was a lance in her heart, quivering there. Chaz has nothing to do with this. How could I have missed this part of her? Closing her eyes, Isis rocked herself gently. How could I not have seen? We initiated her. We took her in. We made her one of us. Can't see everything, can you? Eve angled her head. I think you should be more worried about your vision as it applies to Charles Forte. No. She opened her eyes again. There was misery in them, but behind it was a steel Eve recognized. There's no one I see more clearly than Chaz. She's lying. She'll be tested. In the meantime, you may want to rethink allowing yourself to be used as his alibi. He's betrayed your trust, Eve said, stepping closer. It could have been you, Isis, at any time. Miriam's younger, probably more biddable. I wonder how much longer he'd have pretended to let you run the show. How can you not understand what there is between us when you have it yourself? Do you think the word of some disturbed young woman would make me doubt the man I love? Would it make you doubt Rourke? It's not my personal life that's in dire straits here, Eve said evenly. It's yours. If you care for him so much, then cooperate with me. It's the only way to stop him and to get him help. Help? Isis's mouth twisted. You don't want to help him. You want him to be guilty. You want him to be punished because of where he came from, because of his father. Eve looked down at the folder in her hands, the plain tan cover that hid the terrible images of terrible death. You're wrong. She spoke quietly now, almost to herself. I wanted him to be innocent, because of his father. Then she lifted her gaze, met Isis's. The warrant will have come through by now. We'll search your shop and your apartment. Whatever we find can be used against you as well. It won't matter. Isis forced herself to stand. You won't find anything to help you. You're entitled to be present during the search. No, I'll stay here. I want to see Chaz. You're not related or legally married. Dallas, Isis interrupted quietly. You have a heart. Please, listen to it, and let me see him. Yes, she had a heart, and it ached to see the plea in the eyes of a strong woman. I can give you 5 minutes through security glass. As she wrenched the door open, she set her teeth. Tell him to get a lawyer, for God's sake. In the storeroom of Spirit Quest, and in a workroom in the apartment above, were dozens of bottles and containers and boxes. They were filled with liquid and powder, and leaves and seeds. She found organized records detailing the contents and their uses. Eve ordered everything sent to the lab for analysis. She found knives, carved handles and plain, long-bladed and short. She tagged a sweeper, ordered him to scan for traces of blood. Ceremonial robes and street clothes were scanned as well. She blocked out the voices. Sweepers never worked quietly, and went about her job with focused efficiency. And there, under a neatly folded stack of robes kept fresh in a chest smelling of rosemary and cedar, she found the balled-up and bloody black robe. Here, she signaled to a sweeper. Scan it. Nice sample. The sweeper snapped her gum, ran the nozzle of her shoulder unit over the cloth. Mostly on the sleeves. Behind her protective goggles, the sweeper's eyes were mildly bored. Human, she confirmed. A neg. Can't tell you much more with a portable. That's enough. Eve slid the robe into a bag, sealed and labeled it for evidence. Weinberg was A negative. She looked at Peabody as she handed the bag to her. Careless of him, wasn't it? Yes, sir. Dutifully, Peabody stored the bag in her evidence kit. It would seem so. Lobar was O positive. She moved to another chest, hauled back the domed lid. Keep looking. Twilight settled with its dim light and fitful breezes when she climbed back in her car. Since the tension was still simmering between her and Peabody, she didn't bother to speak, but engaged her car link instead. Lieutenant Dallas for Dr. Mira. Dr. Mira is in session, the receptionist said politely. I'll be happy to log your message. Has she tested Miriam Hopkins? One moment while I check the logs. The receptionist slid her gaze to the side, then back. That session has been rescheduled for 8:30 tomorrow morning. Rescheduled? Why? The log notes indicate that the subject complained of severe head pain and on examination by the physician on duty was medicated. Who was the physician on duty? Eve asked through clenched teeth. Dr. Arthur Simon. Simon says. Figures. Disgusted, Eve whipped her car around a slow-moving maxi bus packed with commuters. "He'll give you a double trank for a hangnail." The receptionist grimaced in sympathy. "I'm sorry, Lieutenant, but the subject was already medicated before her scheduled testing. Dr. Mira is unable to proceed until morning." "Fine. Terrific. Ask her to let me know as soon as she's done." Eve broke transmission. Son of a bitch. "I'm going in to take a look at her myself. Deliver the bags to the lab, Peabody, with a request for Rush, for what good that does. Then you're off duty." "You'll interview Forte again tonight." "That's right." "Sir, I request to be present during interview." "Request denied," Eve said shortly, as she pulled into the garage at Central. "I said you're off duty." She shoved out of the car and walked away. It was midnight, and her own head was aching viciously. The house was quiet when she slipped in, dragged herself up the stairs. It didn't surprise her to see Rourke, awake and on the bedroom link. She glanced at the monitor as she passed through and recognized the young, eager face of one of the engineers assigned to the Olympus resort. It made her think of the last few days of her honeymoon. There had been death there as well. Big surprise, she thought, as she leaned over the sink and splashed her face with cold water. There was never any escaping it. She toweled off, then walked to the bed to sit and remove her boots. When they hit the floor, the effort of undressing further seemed beyond her. She crawled onto the bed and lay across it, face down. Rourke listened to his engineer with half an ear while he watched her. He knew the signs, the shadowed eyes, the pale skin, the slow, deliberate movements. She'd worked herself to the breaking point again, a habit that both fascinated and frustrated him. "I'll get back to you on that tomorrow," he said, and abruptly ended transmission. "You've had a bad one, Lieutenant." She didn't stir when he straddled her and began to knead her neck and shoulders. "I know there's been worse," she murmured. "I just can't think of when right now." "Louis Trevaine's murder has been all over the news. Goddamn vultures." He unhooked her weapon harness, wiggled it off her, and set it aside. A prominent attorney gets himself hacked up in an exclusive private club, it's news. Competently, he worked his thumbs up her spine. "Nadine's called here several times. Yeah, she buzzed Central, too. I don't have time for her." He tugged her shirt free of her slacks and used the heels of his hands. "Did you walk in on it, or was that added for entertainment value?" "No, I walked in on it. Maybe if that idiot droid at the desk hadn't—" She broke off, shook her head. I was too late. She'd already opened him up. She was still working on him, like a kid with a science project. She implicated Charles Forte. "That's out, too." "Of course it is," she said with a sigh. "You can't plug all the leaks." "You have him in custody?" "We're questioning him. I'm questioning him. He denies everything. I found physical evidence in his apartment, but he still denies everything." Denies, she thought, while looking shocked, dislocated, terrified. Oh, shit. She turned her head, pressed her face into the spread. Oh, shit. "Come on." He kissed the top of her head lightly. "Let's get you undressed and into bed. Don't baby me. Try to stop me." She started to shift, then moved quickly before she'd realized her intent or the need. She had her arms around him, her face against his shoulder, her eyes squeezed tight as if to block out visions. "You're always here, even when you're not. We are not alone anymore, either of us." Because he thought she needed it, he lifted her onto his lap. "Talk to me. You've got more than murder and evidence on your mind." "I'm not a good person." She blurted it out before she could stop herself. "I'm a good cop, but I'm not a good person. I can't afford to be." "That's nonsense, Eve. It's not. It's true. You just don't want to see it, that's all." She pulled back so she could look at him. When you love somebody, you can handle the little faults, but you don't want to see the big ones. You don't want to admit what the person you've attached yourself to is capable of, so you pretend it's not there. "What are you capable of that I'm blind to?" I beat Forte into pulp. Not physically, she continued, dragging her hair away from her face. That's too easy. That's too clean. I ripped him to pieces emotionally. I wanted to. I wanted him to tell me what he'd done so I could finish it, close it away. And when Peabody had the balls to tell me she disapproved of my interview techniques, I trounced her. I sent her off duty so I could go back in and hammer at him again. He was silent a moment, then rose to turn the covers down. So let me recap. You walked in on a mutilation in progress, took the killer into custody, a killer who implicated Charles Forte in this and in other murders. This is a matter of days after you discovered a mutilated body on your own doorstep. It can't be personal. I beg your pardon, Lieutenant, but that's bullshit. To continue, he said, coming around to unbutton her shirt, you then take Charles Forte in for interview, a man you suspect with good cause is responsible for several violent deaths. You play hardball, something which your aide, whom you're training, and who, though highly competent, has considerably less experience than yourself in these matters, disapproves of. A police officer who did not walk into a room and find a woman gleefully carving a man into pieces. The news reports were quite specific, he told her. And, he added, before Eve could speak, you then reprimand your aide when she questioned your judgment, subsequently sending her off duty so that you could resume your interrogation. Does that about sum it up? Frowning, she studied the top of his head as he bent to pull off her slacks. You're making it black and white. It's not. It never is. He swung her legs into bed, pushed her down gently. I'll tell you what it makes you, Eve. It makes you a good cop, a dedicated one, and a human one. He undressed, slipped into bed beside her. And that being the case, it's probably best if I divorce you and get on with my life. He pulled her close until her head cozied into the curve of his shoulder. Obviously, up until now, I've been blind to your hideous character flaws. You make me sound like an idiot. Good. I intended to. He kissed her temple, ordered the lights to dim. Now, go to sleep. She turned her head so that she could smell his skin on her way to sleep. I don't think I can let you have that divorce, she said on a sigh. No. No way I'm giving up the coffee. Eve arrived at her office at 8 a.m. She had already been by the lab to harass them, which had, in part, cheered her. Her link was beeping with an incoming when she opened the door, and Peabody stood at attention beside her desk. You're early, Peabody. Eve moved to the link, coded in, and waited for the messages to dispense. You're not on for 30 minutes. I wanted to speak to you, Lieutenant, before I came on duty. All right. Eve put the messages on hold, turned to give Peabody her full attention. You look like hell, she commented. Peabody kept her gaze steady. She knew how she looked. She hadn't eaten or slept. Symptoms, she knew, that were embarrassingly similar to those she displayed when a love affair ended badly. And this, she'd realized during the long night, was worse than any breakup with a man. I would like to formally apologize, Lieutenant, for statements made after the Forte interview. It was insubordinate and incorrect to question your methods. I hope that my lack of judgment in this matter will not influence you to dismiss me from this case or from this division. Eve sat, leaned back in a chair that creakily begged for lubricant. Is that all, Officer Peabody? Yes, sir, except to say, if you've got more to say, pull the stick out of your butt first. You're off duty and off the record. Peabody's shoulders slumped slightly, but in defeat rather than relaxation. I'm sorry. Watching him fall to pieces that way got to me. I wasn't able to divorce myself from the situation and view it objectively. I don't want to believe, she corrected, that he's responsible. It tainted my viewpoint. Objectivity's essential, and more often than any of us want to admit, impossible. I wasn't completely objective either, which is why I overreacted to your comments. I apologize for that. Surprise and relief spread through her. Peabody found them both easier to swallow than crow in fear. Will you keep me on? I've got an investment in you. Leaving it at that, Eve turned back to her link. Behind Eve's back, Peabody closed her eyes tightly, dug for composure. She took a breath, swallowed hard, and found it. So, does this mean we've made up? Eve slanted a look at Peabody's hopeful grin. Why don't I have any coffee? She engaged the link, let her messages run. The first had barely begun when Peabody set a steaming cup at her elbow.
Come on, Dallas, come on. Give me a break. I can go on with an update any time, day or night. Get back to me, damn it, just a couple details.
Not going to happen, Nadine, Eve murmured, and zipped through the next 3 messages from the reporter, all increasingly desperate. There was a communication from the M.E. with the autopsy report. Eve downloaded and ordered a hard copy print. Finally, a relay from the lab which verified the blood on the robe was Weinberg's. I can't see it, Peabody said quietly. Why can't I see it? It's all there. She lifted her shoulders, let them fall. It's all right there. Recharge him and book him. Eve rubbed a finger up and down the center of her forehead. Murder 1 on Weinberg. We'll hold off on the conspiracy to murder on Trevane until Mira's done the testing. Have him brought up for interview again, Peabody. We'll see how many more we can pin to him. Why Alice? Peabody asked. Why Frank? He didn't do them. They're not his. Separate cases? You still think Selena's responsible for them? I know she is, but we're a long way from proving it. She spent the day going over reports, filing her own. By noon, when she faced Chaz in interview again, she was ready to try a different tack. She studied his chosen representative, a young, sad-eyed woman who, by Eve's estimate, could barely be old enough to have passed the bar. She didn't bother to sigh as she recognized the woman from the initiation ceremony. A lawyer witch, she mused, and wondered if that would be considered a redundancy. This is your chosen counsel, Mr. Forte? Yes. His face was a sickly gray, his eyes shades darker. Leela has agreed to help me. Very well. You've been charged with murder, Mr. Forte. I've requested a bail hearing, Leela began, and passed Eve some paperwork. It's scheduled for 2 p.m. today. You won't get bail. Eve handed the papers to Peabody, and it won't delay this very long. I didn't even know the man who was killed, Chaz began. I'd never seen him before that night. I was with you, which puts you on the scene at the time, giving you opportunity. Motive? She leaned back. You were there. You knew he was about to break, to talk. His blood wasn't the first to spill, was it, Mr. Forte? I don't know anything about it. His voice quavered. He took a breath, laid his hand over Leela's, as if for support. Their fingers linked, and his voice became stronger. I've never harmed anyone in my life. It's against everything I believe, everything I've made myself. I've told you. I held nothing back from you, trusting you to understand. Do you own a black robe? Natural silk, wrap style, floor length? I own many robes, but I don't care for black. Eve held a hand out, waited until Peabody put the sealed garment into it. Then you don't recognize this? It's not mine. He seemed to relax a little. That doesn't belong to me. No? Yet it was found in a chest bedroom of the apartment you share with Isis. Carelessly, perhaps quickly hidden under a stack of other robes. There's blood on it, Mr. Forte. Weinberg's blood. No. He cringed back. That's not possible. It's a fact. Your representative is free to study the lab report. I wonder if Isis will recognize it. It might jog her memory. She has nothing to do with this. Nothing to do with any of this. Panic had him lurching up. You can't suspect her of what? Eve cocked her head. Of being an accessory? She lives with you, works with you, she sleeps with you. Even if she's just been protecting you, it puts her in it. She can't be drawn into this. She can't be put through this. Leave her alone. He leaned forward, resting trembling hands on the table. Leave her alone. Promise me that, and I'll tell you whatever you want to hear. Chaz. Leela stood, put a firm hand on his shoulder. Sit down. Don't say anything else. My client has nothing further to say at this time, Lieutenant. I need to confer with him and request privacy to do so. Eve took her measure. The woman no longer looked young and sad-eyed, but cool and determined. There won't be a deal, Counselor, not on this one. She rose, signaled Peabody. But a full confession might get him a psych facility rather than a maximum lockup. Think about it. She swore under her breath once she was outside the room. She'll put a lid on him. He'll do what she tells him because he's too scared not to. Eve paced a yard down the corridor, then back. I've got to get to Mira. She's bound to be done by now with testing. You contact the PA's office. We need somebody down here. Maybe if we have a prosecutor talk to his rep, lawyer to lawyer, we can open it up. ISIS cracked him. Peabody glanced back toward the door as they headed away. He really loves her. There's all kinds of love, isn't there? I don't get why he had sex with Miriam. There's all kinds of sex, too. Some is straight manipulation. She turned into her office to call Mira. Chapter 20. Delusional, sociopathic, and addictive and easily influenced personality. Eve tossed Mira's report aside. She hadn't needed a psychiatrist to tell her Miriam was a lunatic with no conscience. She'd seen that for herself. Or that she had obsessive leanings toward the occult, a low intelligence quotient, and a capacity for violence. Mira's recommendation for further testing and for treatment as a mentally defective might have been sound, but it didn't change the facts. Miriam had butchered a man in cold blood and would more than likely do her time in the quiet rooms of a mental health facility. The truth testing hadn't been much more helpful. It indicated the subject was telling the truth as the subject saw the truth. There were gaps and hitches and confusion. Likely due, Eve noted, glancing at the drug scan results, from having a half-dozen illegal substances bouncing around in her system. Lieutenant? Peabody stepped in, waited for Eve to look up. Schultz from the PA's office just tagged me. What's the status? The lawyer won't budge. She's pushing for a truth test, but Forte keeps refusing. Schultz thinks she's stalling, says she wants 48 to study all the reports and evidence. It'll keep Forte in since bail was denied, but she's insisting. Schultz thinks Forte's ready to roll over, but she's keeping him on a short leash. Schultz give you all that? Yeah, well, I think he was looking to make time. Fresh divorce. Oh. Eve lifted a brow. And he likes a woman in uniform. I'd say it's more like he likes a human with breasts at this point. Bottom line, he doesn't think we're getting any more tonight. The lawyer exercised her client's right for minimum break. Schultz agreed to talk more in the morning. He's headed out. All right. Maybe it's best to give them both time to stew. We'll swing by Isis's place. May be able to shake her. You've got it pretty well wrapped. Peabody fell into step beside her. You'll be able to relax some tonight at the party. Party? Eve stopped dead. Mavis's party? That's tonight? Hell. So speaks the party animal, Peabody said dryly. Personally, I'm looking forward to it. It's been a shitty week. Halloween's supposed to be for kids, so they can blackmail adults into forking over junk food. Grown men and women running around in dopey costumes, it's embarrassing. Actually, it's an old revered tradition with its roots in earth religions. Don't get started, Eve warned as they rode down to the garage. She eyed Peabody suspiciously. You're not actually wearing a costume. How else can I guarantee getting my share of candy? Peabody brushed some lint from the front of her uniform. The store was dark, and so was the apartment. No one answered the knock on any door. Eve considered, checked her watch. I'm going to stake it out for a couple of hours. I'd rather hit her tonight. She's probably at the Sabbat ceremony. I don't figure she's in the mood for naked dancing under the circumstances. I'll stick. You can catch transpo from here. I can stay. It's not necessary. If she doesn't show in a couple hours, I'll head to Mavis's." "Like that?" Peabody scanned Eve's faded jeans, worn boots, and battered jacket. "Don't you want to wear something more festive?" "No. I'll see you there." Eve climbed back in the car, lowered the window. "So, what are you wearing?" "It's a secret," Peabody said with a grin, and walked off to catch a tram home. Embarrassing, Eve decided, and settling back, engaged her link. The system put her through to Rourke at his Midtown office. "Just caught me," he told her, and noted the edge of the steering wheel on the monitor. "Obviously you're not at home getting yourself ready for tonight's festivities." "Obviously not. I've got a couple more hours here, so I'll meet you at Mavis's. We can duck out early." "I can see you're already looking forward to an exciting evening." "Halloween." She glanced over as a ghoul, a 6-foot pink rabbit, and a mutant transsexual crossed the street in front of her car. "I just don't get it." "Darling Eve, for some it's simply an excuse to be foolish. For others it's a serious holy day. Samhain, the beginning of Celtic winter, the beginning of the year, the turn of it with the old dying and the new yet unborn. On this night the veil between is very thin." "Boy," she gave a mock shudder, "now I'm spooked." "Tonight we'll concentrate on using it as an excuse to be foolish. Want to get drunk and have wild sex?" "Yeah." Her lips twitched. "That sounds pretty good. We could get started now. A little link sex." "That would be illegal over an official line. Besides, you never know when dispatch is going to get nosy." "Then I won't mention how much I want to get my hands on you, my mouth on you, how exciting it is to feel you under me when I'm inside you, and you arch back, struggling to breathe and fist your hands on my hair." "No, don't mention it," she told him, as the muscles in her thighs tingled and went lax. "I'll see you in a couple hours. We'll, go home early. Then you could mention it." "Eve?" "Yeah?" "I adore you." With the silky, satisfied smile on his face, he disengaged. She blew out a long, slow breath. "When am I going to get used to this?" she muttered. The sex was mind-scrambling enough. She'd never thought of the act as any more than a necessary and mildly pleasurable physical release. Until Rourke. He could turn her dry-mouthed and needy with a look. But more was the hold he had on her heart in that firm, possessive grip that was alternately comforting and terrifying. She'd never understood the demanding power of love. Frowning, she looked back at the apartment across the street. Hadn't that been what she'd seen there? Power and love? Isis was a strong, powerful woman. Could love have blinded her so completely? It wasn't impossible, Eve mused, but it was disappointing, she admitted. For herself, she knew Rourke had spent much of his life skirting the law. Hell, she thought, he'd stomped on it. She knew he'd stolen, cheated, finagled. She knew he'd killed. The abused child from the mean streets of Dublin had done what he'd needed to do to survive, then had done as he'd liked to profit. She couldn't entirely blame him for either. Yet if he used his power and his position today to kill, what would she do? Would she stop loving him? She wasn't sure, but she was sure that she would know, and the code that she lived by wouldn't allow her to turn a blind eye to murder. Maybe the code Isis lived by wasn't as strong. And yet, as she sat in the dark with the sharp little teeth of the wind biting at her windows, she found she couldn't balance it. Forte had all but confessed now, she reminded herself. Once she'd confronted him with the robe, with the evidence, he'd started toward surrender. That wasn't entirely true, she thought. It was when she'd brought Isis into it that he'd changed directions. Protecting her, shielding her, sacrificing for her. With a new theme playing in her mind, she got out of the car, crossed the street. A number of people wandered the street, many of them in costumes. Even as she stepped over the curb, a gaggle of teenagers rushed by, making enough noise to wake the dead. No one paid any attention to a lone woman in a leather jacket climbing the stairs to a dark apartment. She stood on the landing a moment, scanning the street, the surrounding buildings. It was an area where people minded their own business, she decided, and wouldn't the neighbors be accustomed to seeing people, perhaps the less-than-usual type of person, going up and into the apartment? To test her theory farther, Eve tried the door. Finding it locked, she simply fished a MasterCode out of her pocket. She had the door open in seconds and waited just outside it for the sound of a security alarm. There was only silence inside. No security, she decided, and resisted the temptation to go in. The average civilian wouldn't have access to a master, but there were other ways of popping unsecured locks. Hadn't the apartment been empty the day before? With both Forte and Isis at Central, how easy would it have been for someone to slip in, to plant a blood-stained robe in an obvious place? She shut the door again and stood arguing with herself. Miriam had implicated him. She'd said his name as she sat on the floor, blood still running from her hands. Delusional, sociopathic, easily influenced. Damn it. Eve trooped down the steps back to her car. The evidence was there, wasn't it? Motive, opportunity. It was a fucking textbook checklist. She even had a confessed accomplice in custody. An accomplice he'd been sleeping with on the side, having sex in Central Park, using his influence to bring her into the coven right under his lover's nose. It fit, she told herself. And that was the trouble. It slid so well into place, it was as if someone had oiled the slot. All you had to do was leave out love, selfless, devoted, unquestioning love. Add that, and it scraped along the sides of that slot, screaming in protest. If there was a chance it was a setup, and that she was being used to make it click, she was damn well going to find out. She considered calling Peabody, started to reach for her link when she heard the scream. She was out of the car, her hand on her weapon, when she spotted the black-robed figure dragging a woman into the shadows. "Police!" She rushed forward, drawing. "Back off!" He did more than that. He ran. When Eve reached the woman, she was lying face down, moaning. Holstering her weapon, she crouched down. "How bad did he hurt you?" As she rolled the woman over, she saw the glint of a blade. It was pressed, keen-edged against her stomach before she saw Selina's face. "All I have to do is push, just a little," Selina smiled. "I'd enjoy that. But for now—" Her hand tapped against Eve's throat. She felt the pressure and the sting an instant before her vision blurred. "Now, you're going to help me to the car, or it's going to look that way if anyone notices." Smiling, Selina put her arms around Eve, keeping close so it appeared she was being lifted to her feet. "And if you don't do exactly what I say, your guts will hit the sidewalk, and I'll be gone before you realize you're dead." Eve's head was swimming, her legs like rubber as Selina led her down the sidewalk. "Get in," Selina ordered. "Slide over." She found herself obeying dully, while a part of her mind screamed in protest. "Not so smart now, are you, Lieutenant Dallas? Not so cool. We led you right where we wanted you. Stupid bitch. How do you set this thing to auto?" She couldn't think. Fear couldn't get through the haze, nor could anger or training. She stared blankly at the controls. "Auto?" Her voice was enough. The vehicle shuddered, then hummed discordantly. "I don't believe you are in any shape to drive." Selina threw back her head and laughed. "Give it the address. My apartment. We have a very special ceremony in mind for you." Mechanically, Eve repeated the address and stared straight ahead as the vehicle slowly slid from the curb. "Not Forte," she managed, struggling to snap back. "It was never him." "That pathetic excuse for a man. He couldn't kill a fly if it landed on his dick, if he's got one. But he and that half-breed Wiccan are going to pay. You've seen to that, haven't you? They thought they could save poor little Alice." "Well," So did her stupid grandfather. See where it got them? No one challenges me and lives. You'll find out just how much power I have very soon now, and you'll beg me to kill you and end it. You killed them all. Every one of them. Selina leaned closer. And more, many more. I enjoy the children most. They're so fresh. I walked right in on the grandfather, used his weakness for females, sobbed, told him I was afraid for my life. Alban would kill me. Then I slipped the drugs into his drink, and I killed him. I wanted blood, but, well, it was nearly as satisfying to watch his eyes as he realized he was dying. You've seen how the eyes die first, haven't you, Dallas? They die first. Yes. The mists were moving back to the corners of her mind. She could feel her legs and arms tingle as the nerves pumped back to life. Yes, they do. And Alice, I was almost sorry when we had to end that. Tormenting her day after day was so arousing. The way she would jump at a cat or a bird. Droids, easily programmed. We used the cat that night, had it speak to her with my voice. We were waiting for her. We had plans for her. But she ran into the street and killed herself instead. So we'll do to you what we'd planned for her. Here we are now. As the car veered toward the curb, Eve tested her hand, forced it into a fist. She struck out, backhanded, felt the satisfying connection with flesh and bone. Then the door was wrenched open behind her, hands clenched around her throat. And the world went black. She should be here by now. Though her apartment was filled with people and noise and wildly spinning lights, Mavis pouted. She promised. She'll be right along. Rourke managed to avoid being butted by a red-robed bull, lifted a brow at the maniac call of Toro. An angel spun by, desperately dancing with a headless corpse. I really wanted her to see what Leonardo and I have done with the place. Proud, Mavis turned a quick circle. She'd never recognize her old digs, would she? Rourke scanned the magenta walls with their uninhibited splashes and streaks of cerise and periwinkle. The furniture consisted of heaps of glossy pillows and glass tubes. In keeping with the event, streamers of orange and black swayed everywhere. Skeletons danced, witches flew, and black cats arched. No, he could agree with complete honesty. She'd never recognize her old apartment. You've done wonders. We just love it, and we've got the best landlord on planet. She kissed him enthusiastically. While he hoped her purple lipstick hadn't transferred to his face, he smiled. My favorite tenant. Could you call her, Rourke? With fingers tipped the same shade, she plucked at his sleeve. Just give her a little goose. Of course. Go play hostess and don't worry. I'll get her here. Thanks! She rolled off on glittery, red-wheeled shoes. Rourke turned with the idea of hunting up somewhere quiet to make his call, then blinked at the apparition. Peabody? Her elaborately painted face fell. You recognized me. Barely. With a faint smile, he stepped back to take a full measure. Long blonde hair swirled over her shoulders, down her back, over the tiny scallop-shaped bra that covered her breasts. From the waist down, she was encased in shimmering. You make a lovely mermaid. Thanks. She perked up again. It took me forever to rig myself out. How the hell do you walk? I've got a cutout for my feet. The skirt of the tail covers it. She wiggled back. Pretty restrictive to movement, though. Where's Dallas? She twisted her head to search. I want her to get a load of it. She isn't here yet. No? Because she hadn't worn her watch, she peered down at his. It's almost 10. She was only going to stake out Isis's place for a couple hours, then come straight here. I was about to call her. Good idea. Peabody tried to ignore the prickle of nerves. She's probably stalling. She hates stuff like this. Yes, you're right. But she'd have been there for Mavis, he thought, as he slipped into the corner, and for him. When her link went unanswered, he bypassed security and called through her communicator. There was a humming buzz that indicated it was on standby, but it went unanswered. "Something's wrong," he said when he stepped back up to Peabody. "She isn't picking up." "Let me get my bag. Try her communicator." "I already tried it," he said shortly. "She isn't picking up." "She was staking out Spirit Quest?" "Yeah, she wanted to talk to Isis. Let me get out of this costume. We'll go check it out. I can't wait for you." He pushed his way through the crowd as Peabody shuffled and looked for Feeney. She thought it was a dream at first when she woke, groggy and hot. Her head spun, and when she tried to lift a hand to it, she found she couldn't move. Panic rushed in first. Her hands were bound. He'd often tied her hands when she was a child, tied her to the bed, clamped a hand over her mouth to hold in her screams when he raped her. She pulled at them, felt the vague, faraway pain of the straps cutting into her wrists. Her breath sobbed out as she struggled. Her legs were secured as well, tied down at the ankles so that her thighs were spread. She whipsawed her head, trying to see. Shadows shifted through the room, chased by the flickering lights of dozens of candles. She could see herself in a mirror, a wall of black glass that reflected images and light. She wasn't a child, and it wasn't her father who had tied her. She forced down the panic. It wouldn't help. It never did. She'd been drugged, she told herself. She'd been brought here, stripped naked, and tied to a marble slab like a piece of meat. Selina Cross meant to kill her, and maybe worse, unless she could keep her mind clear and fight back. She continued to work at her wrist straps, twisting, tugging, while she forced her mind to focus. Where was she? In the apartment, most likely, though she couldn't quite remember. The club would have been too dangerous, full of people. It was more private here, in this room where Alice had seen a child sacrificed. What time was it? God, how long had she been out? Rourke was going to be pissed. She bit her lip hard enough to draw blood to hold back the bubble of hysteria. They would miss her, wonder about her. Peabody knew her last location, and they would check it out. And what good would that do her? Eve closed her eyes to wait for calm. She was on her own, she told herself, and she meant to survive. The mirrored wall slid open, and Selina, draped in an open black robe, slipped through. "Ah, you're awake. I wanted you awake and aware before we started." Alban stepped in behind her. He wore a similar robe and the fierce toothed mask of a boar. Saying nothing, he picked up a thick candle, set it between Eve's thighs. He stepped back, lifted an ivory-handled athame from a black pillow, then held it aloft. "Now we begin." Rourke opened the door of his car when his pocket link beeped. He whipped it out. "Eve!" "It's Jamie. I know where she is. They've got her. You have to hurry." "Where is she?" As he spoke, Rourke climbed behind the wheel. "That Cross bitch! They've got her inside the apartment. Or, I think they do. I lost transmission when they got her out of the car." Rourke didn't wait, but pushed the accelerator and flew through traffic. "What transmission?" "I bugged her car. I wanted to know what was going on. I planted a transmitter. I heard stuff tonight. Cross put the car on auto. Go to the apartment. Dallas must have been drugged or something because she sounded weird. And Cross said how she'd killed my grandfather and Alice." His voice flooded with tears. "She killed them both, and kids, and Christ—" "Where are you?" "I'm right outside their place. I'm going in." "Stay out. God damn it, you listen to me. Stay out. I'll be there in 2 minutes. Call the cops. Report a break-in, a fire, anything, but get them there. Understand me?" "She killed my sister." Jamie's voice was suddenly calm and cold. "And I'm going to kill her." "Stay out," Rourke repeated, swearing as the transmission ended. Digging for control, he called Mavis's, snapped out a demand for Peabody when the call was answered with wild laughter.
He was already pulling up at Selina's building when Peabody answered. "Rourke, Feeney and I are heading to Spirit Quest right—" "She's not there. Cross has her, most likely in the apartment building. I'm there now, and I'm going in." "Jesus, don't do anything crazy. I'll call for a cruiser. Feeney and I are on our way." "There's a young boy in there, too. You'd better hurry." With no weapon but his wits and his will, he rushed the door. They were chanting over her. Alban had lighted a fire in a black cauldron, and the smoke was thick and overly sweet. Selina had discarded her robe and was now slowly rubbing glistening oil over her body. "Ever been raped by a woman? I'm going to hurt you when I do it. So will he. And we won't kill you quickly the way we did Lobar, the way we told Miriam to kill Trevane. It's going to be slow and unspeakably painful." Eve's head was clear now, brutally clear. Her wrists burned, slicked with her own blood as she continued to strain against the straps. "Is this how you call up your demons? Your religion's a sham. You just like to rape and kill. It makes you a degenerate, just like any creep crawling in the gutter." Selina brought her hand back, whipped it down hard over Eve's face. "I want to kill her now." "Soon, my love." Alban crooned it. "You don't want to rush the moment." He reached into a box, pulled a black cockerel out. It clucked and squawked, wings flapping as Alban held it over Eve's body. He spoke in Latin now, his voice musical, as he took the knife and sliced off the head. Blood gushed out, steaming over Eve's torso. Beside her, Selina moaned in ecstasy. "Blood for the master." "Yes, my love." He turned to her. "The master must have blood." And very calmly, very quickly, he raked the knife over Selina's throat. "You have been so tedious," he murmured, when she stumbled back, breath gurgling as she grabbed at her throat. "Useful, but tedious." When she collapsed, he stepped over her, removed the mask, set it aside. "Enough of the pageantry. She enjoyed it. I find it stifling." He smiled charmingly. "I don't intend to make you suffer. There's no purpose in it." The stench of blood was nauseating. Using all her will, Eve concentrated on his face. "Why did you kill her?" "She'd ceased to be useful. She's quite insane, you know. Too many chemicals, I suspect, in addition to a defective personality. She liked me to beat her before sex." He shook his head. "There were times I actually enjoyed it. The beating part, anyway. She was very clever with chemicals." Absently, he ran a hand up and down Eve's calf. "And I discovered with the right direction, the proper incentive, she was a very clever businesswoman. We've made an enormous amount of money over the last couple of years. And, of course, there's the membership contributions. People will pay ridiculous amounts of money for sex and the possibility of immortality. So it was just a con. Come on, Dallas. Calling up demons, selling the soul." He chuckled, delighted. "It's the best grift I've ever run, but it's hit its peak. Now, Selina—" He glanced down, idly rubbed a thumb over his chin. She became quite serious about it. She actually believed she had power. He studied the sprawled body with something like amused pity. That she could see smoke, call up the devil. He smiled again, made the ageless sign for lunacy by circling his finger at his temple. A sham, Eve thought, from the beginning, nothing but a long con for profit. Most grifters don't add human sacrifice to the theme. I'm not most grifters, and a few realistic ceremonies kept Selina in line. She developed a taste for blood. So did I, he admitted. That I did find addicting. Taking a life is a powerful thing, an arousing thing. He let his gaze roam over her, appreciating the slim, subtle lines. Selina had been all lush curves, just on the point of overabundance.
I may have you first, after all. It seems a waste not to. Everything in her revolted at the thought. You were the one who had sex with Miriam. You were the one who told her to kill Trevane, to infiltrate the Wiccans. She is the most malleable of women, and under a little chemical inducement, some post-hypnotic suggestion, selectively forgetful. It was never Selina. That's where I was off. You weren't her lapdog, she was yours. That's very accurate. She was losing control. I've known that for some time. She did the cop on her own. His mouth thinned in annoyance. That was the beginning of the end for this, and for her. He'd never have pinned us, and should have been left to fumble around until he gave up. You're wrong. Frank wouldn't have given up. Hardly matters now, does it? He turned away, taking up a small vial and a pressure injector. I'll give you just a bit to take the edge off. You're really quite attractive. I can make you enjoy it when I rape you. There aren't enough drugs in the world for that. You're wrong, he murmured, and walked toward her. Rourke had to force himself not to enter the apartment at a run. If she was inside and in trouble, his rushing in could do her more harm than good. He closed the door quietly at his back. Since the security had already been bypassed, he knew Jamie had gone in. Still, the movement at his side had him lashing out, grabbing at the throat. "It's me! It's Jamie!" "I can't get into the room. They've installed something new. I can't bypass." "Where is it?" "There, that wall. I haven't heard anything, but they're in there. They have to be." "Go outside." "I won't. And you're wasting time." "Then stay back," Rourke ordered, refusing to waste more. He approached the wall, running his fingers over it, ordering himself to be thorough, methodical, while every instinct in him screamed to hurry. If there was a device, it was well concealed. Reaching into his pocket, he took out his daily log, tapped in a program. He thought he caught the distant wail of a siren. "What is that?" Jamie demanded in a whisper. "Jesus, is that a jammer? I've never seen one worked into a pocket diary." "You're not the only one who knows the tricks." He began to play it over the wall, cursing it for being too slow, too inefficient. Abruptly, it emitted a low hum, beeped twice. There's the little bastard. As the door slid open, he crouched and, baring his teeth, prepared to spring. She strained away from the injector, but it pressed against her upper arm, then just as quickly was removed. No. With a quick laugh, Alban set it aside. "Not for sex. That would be unfair to you, and a blow to my pride. Afterward, I'll put you under deeply so you won't feel the knife. It's the least I can do." "Just kill me, you son of a bitch!" With a final vicious pull, she popped the strap, dragged one arm free, and shot her fist into his face. But when she reached for the knife lying beside her, it clattered to the floor. Then, for just a moment, she thought the demons of hell had been loosed after all. He came in like a wolf, with a snarl and a lunge. The force of Rourke's attack sent Alban flying back, sent candles flying to gutter out in pools of blood. Rearing up, Eve struggled to free her other hand, and panic left no room for shock as she spotted Jamie. "Hurry up, for Christ's sake! Get the knife! Cut me loose! Hurry!" His stomach was heaving, but he stepped over Selina's body, grabbed the knife. Keeping his eyes locked on her wrist, he hacked at the strap. "Give it to me. I can get the rest." Her gaze was locked on Rourke, the desk struggle over the bloody floor. Fire was beginning to live in the corner, growing from upended candle to hungry flame. "There's the cops," she said when she heard the siren. "Go let them in." "The door's unlocked." He said it calmly, flatly, as he moved to her feet to cut her ankles free. "Do something about that fire in the corner," she ordered as she scrambled down. "No, let it burn. Let the whole damn place burn to the ground." "Put it out," she snapped again, then leapt like a madwoman onto Alban's back. "You bastard! You son of a bitch!" Even as she dragged his head back, Rourke's fist flew up and cracked against his face. "Get the hell back," Rourke demanded. "He's mine." They rolled over in a violent tangle of limbs to discover only two of them were still conscious. Did he hurt you? Rourke's eyes were still wild when he grabbed her arms. Did he put his hands on you? No. She had to be calm now, she realized, for he wasn't. She wasn't entirely sure what Rourke was capable of when he was in this state. He never touched me. You took care of that. I'm all right. You were taking care of yourself, as usual, when I got here. He lifted her hand, stared at the blood seeping from the abrasions on her wrist, and lifted it to his lips. I could kill him for that, just for that alone. Stop. It's part of the job. He was struggling to accept that. His jacket was ruined, a bloody mess, but he took it off and wrapped it around her. You're naked. Yeah, I noticed. I don't know what they did with my clothes, but I'd just as soon be wearing something other than skin when the troops get here. She rose, discovered she wasn't entirely steady on her feet. They drugged me, she explained, shaking her head to clear it, as Rourke moved her away, eased her down to sit on a clear spot on the floor. Just get your breath back. I have to put out that fire. Good thinking. She drew a couple of cleansing breaths as he used one of the robes to smother the flames flicking along the floor. Then she shot to her feet, cried out, No, Jamie, don't! She took the first running steps forward, but it was already too late. Face white, Jamie got to his feet. The knife, still wet with Alban's blood, was in his hand. They killed my family. His eyes were huge, the pupils pinpricks as he offered the knife to Eve. I don't care what you do to me. He won't ever kill anyone else's sister. She heard the footsteps rushing through the outside door, and following instinct, grabbed the athame by the handle so that her own fingerprints were on it. Shut up! Just shut the hell up! Peabody? Eve turned as her aide rushed in, weapon drawn. Get me something to wear, will you? Peabody's breath came out in 3 unsteady puffs as she scanned the carnage. Yes, sir. Are you all right? I'm fine. Cross and Alban ambushed me, drugged me up, and got me here. They've both confessed to the murders of Frank Wajinski and Alice Lingstrom, Lobar, Weinberg, and conspiracy to murder Trevane. Alban killed Selina, for reasons I will detail in my report. Alban was killed during the struggle to contain him. It was confusing. I'm not sure exactly how it happened. I don't think it matters. No. Feeney stood beside Peabody, scanned Jamie's face, then Eve's, and he knew. I don't think it matters now. Come on, Jamie. You shouldn't be in here now. Lieutenant, with respect, I think it would be best if you and Rourke went home and cleaned up. You're a little too in tune with the season, so to speak. Eve glanced at Rourke, grimaced. Blood and smoke coated his face. You look disgusting. You should see yourself, Lieutenant. He slipped an arm around her. I think Peabody has a point. We'll find a blanket. That should be sufficient to get you home without you freezing or getting arrested. She wanted a bath so desperately she could have wept. Okay, I'll be back in an hour. Dallas, it isn't necessary for you to come back tonight. An hour, she repeated. Secure the scene, call the ME. Get that boy an MT. He's shocky. Contact Whitney. He'll want to know what happened here, and I want Charles Forte released as soon as possible. Eve tugged Rourke's jacket more securely around her. You were right about him, Peabody. Your instincts were on target. They're good instincts. Thank you, Lieutenant. Use them again. If that boy says anything that doesn't jibe with my brief statement of the events, ignore him. He's emotionally wrecked and in shock. I don't want him questioned tonight by anyone. Peabody nodded, kept her eyes carefully blank. Yes, sir. I'll see that he's taken home. I'll remain on scene until you return. Do that. Eve turned and started to button the jacket. By the way, Dallas. What, Peabody? That's a lovely tattoo. New? Eve clamped her teeth together, strode toward the door with as much dignity as she could manage. See? She dabbed a finger into Rourke's chest as they walked down the corridor. I told you I'd be humiliated by that stupid rosebud. You've been drugged, slapped, tied up naked, and nearly killed, but a rose on your butt humiliates you? All that other stuff's the job. The rosebud's personal. Laughing, he swung his arm around her shoulders, hugging her close. "Christ, Lieutenant, I love you."